Two boys were walking late at night in the woods and decided to come to a club that teaches martial arts. At this time, the team practiced led by their coach and taunted each other non-stop. A guy with red hair walked in there and asked, "Where are so many people coming from?" Did the information leak out? They were the disciples of the Tianxiang spiritual palace. One of them was called Liu Zhen and the other was called Zhuzuo. Liu asked what only the people gathered here were counting on. The guy laughed and replied that Liu was a little late. He's been here since just after dark. Liu got angry and said he came last night. And this guy is too ill-informed. Liu got angry at him and told Xiao that the information that the spiritual palace had acquired turned out to be non-exclusive. Zhuo asked Liu, "Isn't the owner of this house Xu Xiaoxiao at stage 3? What is there to live here? What exactly attracted all these people?" Xiao said that they don't know anything. He has mediocre credentials, but he entered the sect early and has large savings. And what's more, he's rumored to have a rank 9 spirit sword. And they're all here because of him. Zhuo told them that a rank 9 spiritual sword like this treasure isn't easy to obtain. But they're going to take it from his corpse? Liu said that the formation would collapse at noon, after which he would rush inside and take the sword. After that, a fierce battle could not be avoided. Liu thought he should go inside and take a comfortable position. Xiao stopped him and asked, "Isn't he familiar with the order of the queue?" Liu replied that according to seniority, he was their elder, so there was no point in them standing in his way. Or do they want to give him a gift themselves? So replied Tsu, at stage 5. And many more, and will not give him peace of mind in such a case. Liu said for them to try to do it then. They will now see who is afraid of who. Zhuo said that he let them not think that he was allowed everything just because he had an elder behind him. Just then, a door opened behind them, and a young guy with a sword stepped out. When Liu saw him, he was surprised and called Xu Xiaoshui's name. Xu told them that it wasn't dawn yet, so why was it so noisy? Their shouting keeps him awake. The guys were all astonished and looked at him with their mouths open. After all, Xu had recently died. Xu stood in front of them and hesitated. He said that at least the Xu they knew was really dead. In his past life, he suffered from a terminal illness and came into this world as soon as he closed his eyes and stopped his pulse. And he had to shift into the body of a Trensan spiritual palace disciple with the most ordinary data. He stayed in the spiritual palace for many years and only reached the 3rd stage of tempering the spirit and 10. He went to the breakthrough retreat with a determination to die, but it didn't work out and he died. They both end up with miserable lives. And if he's given the opportunity, he shouldn't be tormented by rumors. Except his powers aren't even up to par, so how can he beat the others? I wish he had some kind of cheat. And then in a moment a lottery appeared in front of him in which he won the active skill normal and the passive skill red. Xu started playing with it and said it was so crudely executed. Is this system mocking him or something? Xu thought, active and passive skills. In terms of games, active skills are much cooler than passive skills. How could he fight enemies while relying on passive skills? But this system heavily favors active skills. This roulette is so collaborative. Xu began to play with it and twist it around, asking, how does this thing work? Does the arrow move? It's hard for him, he doesn't even have any lubricating oil. Xu couldn't move it and asked, what the hell is this useless shit? Is the system messing with him or something? Xu thought with his head, since his arrow wouldn't turn, he should turn the disc. And then it started to turn and Xu won the jackpot. He said, an active skill popping up in front of him. When he turned the disc the system said congratulations. And he got a passive system. Xu thought it was cheating and decided he needed to spin again. And then the system said again that he had a passive system. Xu, seeing the bright light on him, yelled for her to stop. He immediately moved into his life. Xu grabbed his head and shouted that he hadn't lucked out and pulled out a passive skill. But what was with the breathing methodology? Couldn't he have been given something more useful? How angry he is at this system. He started to calm himself down with his breathing, but then realized that he couldn't breathe because of it. Opening his nostrils the widest, he finally inhaled air. When he opened his eyes after the last minutes of his life, he saw that he was up for air and thought he had made it through. When he came to his senses, he got excited and said it was awesome. Is passive breathing some kind of cultivation technique? He was very happy with himself. After all, this kind of chance of falling out is 10%. And Xu was invincible even if he stood still. One of the flies swooped down on him and Shu immediately killed it and said it was worth bragging about as his defenses were pierced. And then the system in front of him popped up and showed him that Shu had been attacked and passivity points had been added. But the breathing technique has also increased to level 1, and so have the passivity points. Shu saw that it could also be pumped up. Since it was an acquired skill, there must be innate skills as well. The mosquito bite didn't give many points, so it would be hard to get them. And then he had to go outside because of the screaming. Out on the street, the guys were telling him he wasn't dead. Is it really him? Not some fake? The system immediately saw this and rewarded him with plus 12 passivity points. Shu realized that there was no point in thinking, this was just the beginning, and it seems that in that life, the god had decided to take care of him. I wonder what kind of life he will live this time, Shu thought. Shu knew that stage 3 and 4 were the highest stage 5 and it was in Liu's possession. They gathered to fight over the 9th grade spiritual sword. Shu said that they had come for his dead body, but unfortunately for them, he had broken through and they had come all the way here for nothing. Stage 4 and he shouldn't be touched. Liu replied that a stage 4, so also a rank 9 spiritual sword, he was no opponent to him, what to speak of the others. Shu told them to go back to where they came from. And let them tell their elders that if they want his sword, let them come for it themselves. After all, what good would it do to call the younger ones here and cause trouble? Liu replied that brother Shu had great strength, so he should go. Zhuo was surprised and asked Liu, is he just going to leave like that? Liu asked, why not? Let him go and kill him if he wants to. Just let him remember to get rid of the body. Zhuo replied that he couldn't. Shu told them to stop. He asked that they thought they could come and go here whenever they wanted. Do they all realize how much they pissed him off? Qiao asked, didn't he say he was letting them go? Liu asked Shu, does he take back what he said? If he has the desire to fight, he won't be able to handle everyone. They will take turns fighting. Shu replied not to be nervous, he just had something to say. And he decided to take the rare opportunity to earn passivity points. Shu said that they only knew that he had broken through to stage 4, but had actually broken through to stage 5. Hearing these words, all the guys were surprised and could not believe it. And the points of suspicion and passivity increased by 17. Shu realized that of course, whether it was physical or moral pressure, the passivity points would continue to rise. Shu said that not only was it stage 5, he was already almost at stage 6. The system immediately said that the passive points were added by 15. He started to go on and said that compared to them, he was even at stage 7. Yes, and stage 8 is nothing more than a splash for him. Liu asked Shu, is he having fun making his brothers laugh? Stage 8? If he's at stage 8, he'll run his head against the wall. He'd rather die than be bullied. If it's at stage 8, then let it come here. And decided to capture him altogether. Shu ran and shouted at them that they shouldn't throw words around like that. Liu said if he had the courage to tease them, then let him dare to open the door too. Shu sighed and said it was dangerous. I should have pissed them off. The system added 1 point to his score again. Shu immediately realized that someone outside was interested in him. At this time, the girl was sitting on the gate and said that brother Xiushou was so cute. In his past life he was physically tormented and his new image is mentally tormented. They are comrades in misfortune, but he's not going to put up with this kind of torture anymore. Now that he has a second chance, he will never harm this body. Hearing this, the system said that a new feature had been unlocked, the mall, and he needed to open the interface to view it. Shu was surprised and didn't realize what had happened. He opened and saw a gift box with a passivum, and then Shu realized that in the mall, passivity points could be used to buy things. He immediately said what he was buying. After all, the system kept counting passivity points, and he kept thinking what value they had. After making the purchase, the system informed him that 10 skill points had been obtained, and 3 passive keys. Yishu saw this and said that the items had been updated. The system showed him what the price of these items were. When Shu saw this, he said that he had spent 10 passive points to buy something more expensive than 10,000 points. Shu got excited and said that he would consider it a gift set for a newbie, and began to thank the system. The system appeared behind him again and said that to unlock the new roulette, let him use the passive key. And please don't be disobedient. When Shu heard that, he immediately gasped and felt sad. After all, he had been unlucky at roulette last time. Shu opened it and said he couldn't even see the prizes on it, a real surprise box. At least he was prompted to use the passive key. Shu reached for the keys and said he would take the chance. Need a skill that could make him stronger in an instant. Shu prayed that it wasn't an active skill. It would be useless to him, he needed a passive now. The system told him that she thanked him for visiting. Shu lost his temper and asked her, could she be more serious? What more thanks for visiting? Shu calmed down and said that he was not African, next time it should work out, and then the system tore up his cards again and told him that she thanked him for visiting. Shu couldn't take it anymore and started spitting blood. Shu said that everything was already spent. And another thank you to him came his way in this roulette. The system came out and said that a lasting passive skill called amplification had been obtained. Shu said that this was the ultimate miracle. Shu looked at his muscles and asked, what kind of strengthening? A technique to strengthen the body? But he didn't feel any stronger. But judging by the system's naming habits, this skill is of the invincible type, I guess. Shu stood in front of the system and said that maybe it's all because of the low level. Anyway, he has 10 skill points, pump some in and see the effect. Shu did as he said, and his level started to rise from the 2nd level and reached the 5th level. Shu felt that he now had an effect. So he decided to pump in some more. Shu didn't stop there, and with a swing, he reached level 8. He took the shirt off of himself and decided to take a look. He said he wondered how much stronger he was after pumping the boost up to level 8. Shu slammed his powerful fist on the ground and the concrete was shattered. Shu was excited about his new strength. He said that this strength corresponded to the 8th stage of spirit hardening. He has 3 more skill points. He decided not to stop there and pump up some more. And he made it to level 10. In a moment, he stopped when he saw the enhancement innate at level 1. He didn't understand how this even happened. Shu immediately grabbed his body and didn't understand what was happening to him, for he was burning like a furnace. Shu opened his arms in a moment and began to glow like Bengal lights. His new beauty was as graceful as a model. Shu felt such a sensation as if he had been reborn. This was how an innate skill felt. Shu decided that he wanted to try out his strength. And with strong pounding hands he aimed at the ground. From being hit so hard, he didn't expect there to be much of an effect. The result was an explosion. Shu rejoiced and said that it had a very destructive power of someone with a strength of 5 units. If such a blow were to hit someone on the head, and now it looks like he has a good chance at the cloud chasing tournament. This tournament is very big, an annual examination of the sect in which fellow disciples compete in techniques. On the basis of their achievements envy their promotion or exclusion. The original owner was expelled for 2 years, and if he repeats the same mistakes, he could be expelled from the sect. It was because of this that he was desperate when he went to meditate, putting his life on the line. In 3 days, there will be a tournament of chasing clouds in the outer courtyard. He will show them the rebirth of the phoenix. Shu said that this time, he would amaze everyone and show what true warrior strength is all about. At the Tiansan spiritual palace in the outer courtyard, the guys all gathered and greeted Big Brother Shu. Zhou said upon seeing Shu, it was like he was a completely different person. He managed to break through, so his aura became different. Shu made his way over to everyone and saw that such a crowd had lined up to participate this year, but you could only register by walking up to that person. Shu walked over to it and saw that it was the only empty window, but there was no one here. He started knocking and shouting to Elder Qiao to wake up. Qiao opened his eyes and looked up smiling. Isn't this Shu, thought he. But how come he wasn't dead yet? Shu immediately saw that this rude old geezer had insulted him. No wonder no one came up here to register. Qiao asked the guy, did he come to opt out and go down the mountain? Shu asked, what do you mean refuse? Isn't he one of the top 10 chasing clouds? Qiao smirked and asked, he's saying what? And then the system added his sarcasm points of passivity. Shu told Elder Qiao that he was serious. His strength has greatly increased after the killing meditation. His body is at the innate realm. Qiao couldn't help but spit out his water with laughter. People passing by didn't understand what was going on there. Qiao said, giving Shu a look at his serious face. Like he's telling the truth. He can't take it anymore. That's hilarious. The system immediately added 1 point to his praise. Soy covered his face because he was ashamed. And realized that the system was a toxic system. The guy said that Shu was criticized. He also pissed off Elder Qiao. and they heard that he broke through to stage 8. And then the blonde guy in the crowd said that he had just said he had achieved innateness, hadn't he? The guys said they didn't believe him. The system grated out that Shu's doubt points had increased. He turned around and saw that it was coming from the boys. Shu realized that Elder Qiao's wave of laughter had raised many questions for him and brought a bunch of points. Qiao said to Shu, "Stop laughing, what did he come for?" Shu replied he almost forgot. "He wants to register for the Chasing Clouds tournament," Qiao asked, not afraid of embarrassing himself. Registering it innately or the 4 stages of spirit hardening, Shu replied that there were 4 stages. Qiao said for him to be content with life and not be vain. Shu realized that although his cultivation was at the 4th spirit tempering stage, but his body was definitely innate. Shu told Elder Qiao not to forget about the spirit crystals. Qiao threw them to him and said he was a resourceful guy. And so he got 12 spiritual crystals. Qiao said that he personally bought the elixir for him, just don't let him tell others. Shu saw that Elder Qiao cared for him so much. If it wasn't for his support for the past 2 years, he would have been kicked out long ago. He would repay him for such kindness as the opportunity presented itself. Qiao thanked and said he was on his way. Qiao thought that even if the guy broke through to stage 4, he was still out of luck. He would probably never see him again. Qiao said that Shu must not find out that he had sold the information about his death meditation. Let him take the elixir as compensation. But then the system added points to his score and Shu thought that he could still understand the anxiety, but deception. What a sly old man. Lying on the couch, Shu saw that he had a total of 148 passive points. But that's not enough, you can't even buy anything with it, and it seems that to get passivity points, he'll have to sneak into the crowd and make a mess of things. Wouldn't that make him famous as some kind of buffoon? Shu realized that he would have to take on the role of the villain. He's making too much up, he has to somehow increase his strength in 3 days. Shu said that Elder Qiao was unexpectedly generous. The spirit tempering pills are very expensive, each one is much stronger than 12 spirit crystals, and now he should try the spirit crystals. But how to use them without side effects? Shu leaned his nose against it and couldn't help himself. He began to dream of girls caressing him. It was as if his soul was being tenderly stroked by the celestial women, and every pore in his body was exploding, and the lightness rises from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Shu said that cultivation was a good thing, but the most important thing was that cultivation was very effective. He had just broken through from stage 4 in one breath. The breathing technique that the system gave him is a very frightening thing. It absorbs perfectly without any loss, and ordinary spirit crystals are also known for their convenience, but aren't spirit hardening pills more effective? Shu thought. Shu was very lethargic and flushed, but was saying that he could still practice, and reached for the potion. 3 days later, on top of the towering clouds, the Grand Elder of the Spiritual Technique Pavilion, Xiao Qixio, was there and was being considered. Xiao told the guys that the total number of applicants for this tournament was 1,782. The first tournament is a group qualifier, with 100 people in each group. There will be 18 groups in total. There may be a referee in each group, but if he assists them there will be a disqualification. His advice to them would be fatal wounds and injuries are inevitable. Let them not overdo it. The judge is not a god, and there may be times when one of them gets angry, distracted, or frozen with fear. At those times, no one will rescue them. The guy said that he could die. Xiao replied that it was true, life was full of surprises and they wouldn't always come out of battle in perfect condition. Elder Qiao said that their jokes were still just as effective. Scared everyone into cold sweat on such a hot day. Xiao said that at noon, he announces the official start of the Chasing Clouds tournament. The guy was yelling that whoever could make it to the end would be the winner. And there are prizes for the top 10 and they can move on to the next stage. They have to try really hard. The guy told the others to get up on stage when their number was called. The guy called the 2 guys over and told Liu and Zhou to come on stage. Zhou immediately said that they were in the same group, but he didn't want them to be. Zhou realized that they would have to fight on the same stage. Liu heard that they were also in the same band as Shu. The guys asked, "Didn't Shu come out of meditation? Where the hell is he?" Qiao asked, "He couldn't have overslept, could he?" The boy replied that it couldn't be. He'd seen him on his way here recently, except he looked strange. Maybe he was mistaken. The guy got tired of waiting for him and asked loudly, "Is Shu here?" Xiao said if he didn't show up by the end of time, let him move on to the next one. Elder Jiao had said about Shu that he was a reckless madman. How dare he be late for the Chasing Clouds tournament? Zhao Yinyan asked Sister Su. The brother Shu she told her about seems to be in no hurry to come out. Did she forget to wake him up? Second court disciple Su Qianqian asked Sister Zhao. What is she talking about in general? Brother Shu will definitely come. He must have been delayed by something. It's his last tournament, she should watch it. When she first entered the outer courtyard, she didn't know anyone there. It was because of his help that she was able to make her way to the inner courtyard in a month. Zhao said getting into the inner courtyard in a month, her talent is comparable to Sister Xian Sha. So many days had passed, and she still remembered the favor they'd done her. Sis will help her find someone better. The guy got tired of waiting for him and said his number again and gave the name Shu Xiaoshui. He's getting one last chance to get out. The night before the Chasing Clouds tournament, she realized that he had a tournament tomorrow. Success or failure depended on it. As if not to go crazy, he got high on this potion and powder, didn't go sailing off to a distant voyage. In the shadow of the tournament, he was heading for the mountains and said with fatigue that this damn breathing technique had worn him out. On the way, an old man caught up with him and asked Shu that he was from the outer courtyard. Shu bent over with fatigue and replied that he was right. The old man asked if he was going to participate in the tournament. Shu replied that not really, he was just on his way. The old man said that young people should not burn out. Health is the capital of the revolution. Shu realized that the spirit-hardening pills and breathing methodology harmonized perfectly with each other without any such effects. He had already reached the peak of stage 5, but because the pace was too fast, his body could no longer cope. Shu apologized to the old man and said he was in a hurry and said goodbye. The old man said unsteady gait, but not floating, and the steps are soundless. His face is emaciated, but his eyes are piercing and full of life, and his breathing is even. And such a talent languishes in the outer court, he clearly lacks luck. And then she finally got there and said he was here. Su was happy to see him and said he had come. Zhao asked, "Is it him?" Zhao asked what Su had done to him. Su was surprised at first, not understanding, and asked, "What did she do?" Zhao replied to Su, "Look at him, holding onto his waist with trembling hands, cheeks sunken and eyes closed. Wasn't she the one who secretly visited him 3 days ago? Did she do this to him?" Su blushed and told Sister Zhao to stop bullying her. Shu apologized and said he was delayed. Jiao said, "That kid, he made people worry. What was he doing?" The guy shouted to everyone that the Chasing Clouds tournament had officially begun. Lu immediately punched one of the guys, causing him to fly back into Shu's arms. That wasn't all. The guys started chopping everyone in order, and those flew off like a cork to Shu's hands. Shu wondered how they could kill each other so calmly. They're all alive. And then he couldn't help himself and told them all to stop. He didn't understand what was going on, for they were supposed to be his passivity points. How could this be possible? Shu told them that oppressing the weak wouldn't show their abilities, so let them attack him while they had the chance. The guys laughed at him. They saw how he couldn't stand on his feet and they were shaking a lot. The guys asked, 1 against 100? Did he see himself when he took a piss this morning? Fighting a weakling like that? Doesn't he think he's a little too big for his own good? And then Shu got excited, because his plan worked. They all bought it. He decided to add treats to make them want to attack him. Shu said that this is the 9th grade spiritual sword. Whoever defeats him, he'll give it to him. The boy tried to stop him, for he would disrupt the arena in such a way. Shu replied that the judge would be a witness if he didn't keep his word. Let him be struck by lightning. Shu shouted to everyone that here was his 9th grade spiritual sword. Immediately, all the guys attacked him, threatening to kill him. Zhao told Su that her brother Shu has a spirit of self-sacrifice, discarded it and involved others in the competition. Xiao also realized that Shu had used the sword to ignite people's hearts, intending to deal with everyone involved at once. I would love to see what unique stunt he decides to pull. And then 2 guys attacked him, and one of them used a wind-dissecting linnock. And the other one used a spirit-extinguishing sword. Shu asked, "Sword blade? You shouldn't use cold weapons in battle." Immediately, he flipped them both over with a single blow. The referee said both guys are out of the arena, which means they lost and can no longer participate. The guy said Shu was at stage 6. But he's actually at 7. With one slap, he could take him down. At this time, Shu realized that they were trapped in his trap. The guy said that Shu turned into a pig to eat a tiger. Zhao said that his body is very strong, something like this is only possible at stage 5. Su replied, that's exactly what it is. Brother Shu is very strong. He will definitely take the first place. Zhao said that Su had said that this was his last tournament. Xiao saw this battle and realized that this guy had innate breath. Shu said that in truth, he had recently practiced an invincible technique, so his body was unmatched. Today he wants to test everything he has learned. If they come at him with their bare hands, he will not move or even resist. Zhao shouted at Shu that he was crazy. But then a fierce guy came out and said that it seems Shu is confident in his skills. His name is Chiao Wei. He possesses the 100-step fist king of beasts. And asks for guidance. Shu listened to him and told him to get to it. Chiao replied that he would apply his technique. Chiao showed himself in all his glory, and attacking used the 100 steps of a fist beast. Shu said 100 punches in one breath. Cool. At this time, Chiao was trying various ways to do something, while Shu was just defending himself and smiling. Chiao didn't understand how it was so, why he couldn't do it. After all, he had already used this technique 3 times. But he didn't fall down, he didn't even take a step. Shu asked Chiao, has he not eaten mush in a long time? And showing his middle finger, he started making fun of him. Chiao didn't like this, and decided to unleash all his power on him, and asked for strength from the beasts around him. The guys asked, is this really a blood-burning technique? Mad Chiao has gone completely insane. This technique burns blood and temporarily increases strength. But speaking of stage 5, even practicing it at stage 9 will tear you apart. Chiao didn't wait for the right moment and headed to attack Shu. After all, he needed that sword. Zhao said it's the end. She's afraid this punch will make his brother look like an idiot. Or maybe even kill him. The dust immediately rose in the arena, making it impossible to see anything. The guys were asking who won. The guy saw Chiao and said that it seemed like he would have the last laugh. Still, the difference in strength was obvious. The judge didn't even move. Shu must have already died. Damn it, he had obtained a 9th grade spiritual sword. Shu said that he wouldn't tolerate something like this. Shu punched him and calmed him down, saying that Chiao was tired and now he would have to rest for a long time. When they saw that Shu was alive, they couldn't believe it. After all, he should not have survived such a blow. Elder Zhao was also worried and was very happy for his tomboy. Shu asked who was willing to be next. The system immediately jumped in and awarded passivity points to Shu. He rejoiced and said, here come the points. And Chiao should be thanked. Zhua told Barchen that for some reason he felt that Shu was about to be exhausted. Didn't he want to test his Dark Menace fist? Chen replied that not yet. Right now, he's not his opponent. They need to watch for a while longer. Chen saw that after coming out of meditation, Shu began to behave differently. And that was keeping him from calming down. The guys were now saying that Shu was definitely at stage 5. His body is stronger than a stage 9 practitioner. What kind of spiritual technique does he use that he can resist blows like that? Shu replied that it wasn't a spiritual technique, but an innate level enhancement. The guy said that it was nonsense and they didn't believe it. The guy said they were all stupid cowards. He might have some abilities, but after a few fierce skirmishes, he lost half his life. He's just showing off now so no one else dares to attack him. Muscular idiot Chiao had given him enough time to ferret out the situation and saved him a lot of trouble. He saw that this Lun Shu had carefully planned everything. He was confident of his victory. And then a guy introduced himself. His name was Yi Chunting, and said that he owned an offering bow, and asked for advice. Shu thought, this offering fist seems to be one of the accumulated techniques. This technique aims to kill with a single blow, no efficiency at all. Shu replied that he wouldn't answer him. Could he replace the reception? Yi laughed and saw that he was shitting himself with fear. Yi immediately raised his hand and started attacking, and told Shu to get a strong punch from him. Shu felt that fist coming towards his face in that fist, and immediately dodged it at the last moment. Yi fell to the ground and said he shouldn't have done that. The referee said the guy was out of the arena, eliminated. Yi yelled that Shu had set him up. Shu apologized to him and said that he was more interested in receiving 100 punches in one breath. Shu turned to the guys and said that they had seen for themselves that it was hard to attack one by one, and it was no use. Time is limited, so let them attack all at once. A guy in the crowd came out and said loudly that he wasn't going to put up with this mean-spirited backstabber any longer. Since it can't be shaken by fighting one at a time, they will act together and throw him out of the arena. The guys immediately all gathered in a circle and one of them told everyone to attack. When Shu saw this, he was even a little happy. Shu was taking everything in and saw his passivity points grow. But he doesn't feel anything from them. Elder Xiao said he was curious. The guy asked Xiao, he was so curious. He hadn't seen anything so outrageous in 30 years of practicing. Xiao saw that this boy is an entertaining, astonishing talent. He has 3 innate talents and an innate body. A great rarity. Su asked them if they were ashamed to attack with such a crowd. He's so pitiful, he keeps getting beaten up but he won't give up. He's so tough, so strong and unyielding, he's the most attractive man she's ever known. And then all the girls gathered in a circle and shouted for Shu to only go forward. He can do anything. Shu saw the system open up and the excitement of passivity increase. He didn't realize at first what was happening. Xiao said, "It's getting noisy. And the result is already obvious, now they can finish early." The guy replied that he had heard and said there was 1 stick of incense left before the end of the group stage. Shu wondered why they had a time limit. There were still a lot of people left in the arena, and he had been beaten more than the others, so he shouldn't be counted as a defeat. Shu decided it was time for him to end the show too. He immediately grabbed one by the arms and said that if there were no fish left on the surface, it was worth sinking deeper. Shu proceeded to throw himself out of the arena and handled it very well. People didn't believe this could happen. After all, everyone is outside the arena. Chiao saw all this and counted too much and decided he had to get out. Shu grabbed him and asked, was he going somewhere? Chiao asked what he wanted. Shu replied that he thought he was pretty strong. The incense stick hasn't finished burning yet, how about another round? The moment he became strong and fierce, exuding heat. It was refreshing. Shu asked the guy, how about another round? Chiao couldn't accept it and ran away like a rat. The referee said Chiao is outside the arena, so he is out. The guy looked at the candle and said that the competition was over. Zhou told Brother Liu that he was right. It was worth the wait, and they would be able to get into the top 10. Liu replied that he was wrong, they were in the top 3. The guys couldn't believe that Shu had beaten everyone. All the girls were screaming that they wanted Shu. They were ready to give birth to a monkey with him. Shu laughed and asked why give birth to a monkey. Liu told Shu's brother that they congratulate him on his victory. Shu replied that he congratulated them too. The guy walks up to Shu and says that he congratulates him and this is the prize he gets for first place. This is the champion's spatial ring. It's a rare treasure worth 1,000 gold pieces. Shu said that it was much more valuable than his 9th grade spiritual sword. And then he asked, where was his sword? The boy replied that it was safe. He would be able to pull it out once he used a drop of blood to make the ring recognize him as the master. Zhao reached out and said, might as well go and meet her little brother. Su said he shouldn't. It's already good that he won't leave the spiritual palace. Zhao said to Su just to look at that joyful face. Isn't she afraid of his brother being stolen? Su asked, what kind of nonsense is this? She hadn't even thought of such a thing. Zhao asked surprised, really? Then Sis will ask him to be her Daoist partner. She won't mind, right? Su ran away and said that Sister Zhao was stupid. Zhao laughed and said she was very nice. Shu saw that one of the girls ran and it was Su. He looked at Zhao and saw the seductive glasses going up. Shu saw that it was a bitch of a system. Why this exposure? She's misleading people. Shu yelled to his beautiful little sister to stop. Zhao responded by telling him to try and catch up with her. Elder Qiao came over and said that Shu was good. He turned the situation around during the beating. What a guy! Qiao asked Shu, did he not even notice him? All this time he was staring at the girls again? Shu replied that no such thing was in his mind. Did he see his performance from start to finish? Qiao replied that he had been present at the duel the entire time. When did he only have time to practice his innate body? Had he even hidden it from him? Shu replied that he had previously told him last time. He didn't believe him himself. Qiao said that at that time, even the devil didn't believe him. And started laughing loudly. Shu waved his hand and started to leave. Qiao stopped him and held out the bottle saying that he was injured. let him go back and heal his wounds properly. Shu, seeing the bottle, started to glow with joy and said that it was an elixir. He asked Xiao to give it to him. After coming home, Shu lay down on the couch and said that he had become the champion of the group stage. This was his great achievement in the past 3 years, and the innate level of enhancement is really something. I'd have to drop some blood to make the champion's ring recognize its master. Shu realized that the space inside was half the size of the house. There weren't many things in it, the most valuable being 100 spirit crystals and a bottle of elixir. He understood the hardening elixir. We must get him out of here soon. This is his first victory on the road to a life of suffering. And he must keep the ring as a memento. And now it was time for the most important part. How many passivity points did he manage to pick up during this brutal and crazy battle? Shu immediately opened the system and saw that he had 176 passive points collected. He was disappointed because there were only 5 digits. Shu said as much as 17,000. He got very excited and said that it was very good for him. After all, not taking into account the guys who didn't participate in beating him up and only gave a few passivity points, he had cut down a whole 17,000 points. Shu calmed himself and told himself to be quiet. After all, it was still unknown what he could spend this kind of points on. He opened his suitcase and saw that he had something new. But when did it arrive? Shu saw that he had gotten 5,000. And advanced to the second stage. After the passive skill reached the innate level, the normal points expired. The system wants him to use second-level skill points to level up. Second-level skill points are needed for reinforcement, but why is it marked in grey, thought Shu? Can't they be bought? He has enough passive skill points. Maybe he can only buy second-stage skill points when he reaches the realm? Shu said that in any case, he wasn't going to rely on reinforcement alone. He needs something from the other direction as well. With 17,000 passive points, it was time for him to experience the joy of doing 10 spins in a row. After doing so, he was very disappointed because they had decreased by 10,000. He put his hand on the twist and used the epitome of luck. The system just thanked him for attending and gave him nothing. Shu fell to the floor in humiliation and was sad about his lost points. So Shu decided to use it once more and took one skill. Shu saw that the skill spearhead had fallen out. He did not understand what it was because there was some uncomplicated name. Shu said that since it's a lasting passive skill, so his role is making a part of his body sharp, not the hidden bitterness. Maybe he makes his fingernails sharp? Shu decided to try it out and smashed his fingernails against the table. But it went wrong and he was in a lot of pain. Shu said it wasn't a spearhead. It's the effect of the innate body enhancement. Maybe the purpose of passive skills overlap, he thought. After looking at the system he realized that it wasn't. The system can't be that stupid. Absolutely impossible. The system congratulated him on his points again. Shu said the acquired one was too low. Same with the reinforcement last time. Shu said that perhaps the effect of the spearhead would become more noticeable if one pumped it properly. He was thinking, should he continue pulling cards or pump the skill? Shu pulled out the key and was glad he had the last one left. And decided to hold on to it until next time. Shu looked at the system and saw that there was something wrong. He asked, "What's going on?" "A black screen? Legend has it that there is a sword technique that crosses the firmament. When this technique was created, the strongest immortal swordsman was Elder Cha, the last owner of the Holy Spirit Temple and its leader, Qi Zhenxiao, hiding from the world. So the story goes, the future generation adopted the 7 sky-crossing swords and created the white cloud sword technique. And of course, its quality had decreased by several levels. The white cloud sword technique is recorded in the hidden spiritual pavilion of Tiansan Spiritual Palace, where a total of 13 swords are displayed. Shu, who had previously qualified, lost everything he had been learning his entire life. In the end, after 3 months, he had learned the first sword, Calm White Cloud. As his mind was consumed by darkness and he felt the shaking of heaven and earth, Shu saw the hidden bitterness flying away with him towards the clouds. The first sword has no beginning or end, it is immortal. Endless sword-wielding styles rushed into his mind, and countless insights came one after another, fully aware of the jab, the horizontal, the provocation, and the cut. And now Shu's body began to burn. He asked with fright, "What is happening?" Shu said that the passive skill of mastering swordsmanship had been obtained. Had he really become the epitome of luck? He wondered how much swordsmanship had increased with the use of the reinforcement and point. Shu pondered for a long time whether he should try it. Going into his subconscious mind, he realized that he needed to bear his sword. Shu swung his sword around and opening his eyes saw all of his chairs being destroyed in a single strike. Shu was very surprised from acquiring such a skill for himself. He didn't believe it and didn't understand how it was possible. At the meeting, the man was saying at the table that he didn't drink alcohol. A true cultivator should not be intoxicated by alcohol, but by the sword. In turn, alcohol clouds the mind, and if you continue to drink, the sword loses its precision. The elder hearing these words didn't hold back the alcohol in his mouth, and at the fountain spit it out into the guy's face. He laughed and said he didn't do it on purpose. He asked the man that he had achieved great heights in kendo without drinking. The man replied that he had indeed made some progress. The elder asked Elder San had returned, but for how long? Elder San drank his alcohol and replied that he would be delayed for a while. He could be either just drunk or intoxicated by the sword. Of course it was a pity that he couldn't do it, otherwise the 8th immortal sword would have been his. The elders started laughing at the man. In the Tiansan Heavenly Palace, in the outer courtyard, a warrior came out and felt his sword feeling anxious. Elder San said that swords are shouted. And the acquired sword intent can be heard too. The man said, just like that, suddenly in the outer courtyard of a disciple capable of developing acquired sword intent. In addition, 2 more have innate spirit hardening, and 1 has an innate body. The quality of the disciples in the outer palace is unusually good. Elder San asked, innate body? He said that as far as he could remember, the last time the sword intent was manifested by a Sioux girl. The man replied that yes, that was the innate intention of the sword. Sioux is incomparable. She is a true genius. If one of the continent's 21 famous swords were to fall into her hands, even it would not be her equal. The elder said to keep it to himself, they should go look. He has no intention of staying here any longer. Elder San said they could tread. Immediately they obeyed him and flew away. San, seeing that he was left alone, slowly sighed and took the mug of alcohol in his hands and drank. At this time, Shu rejoiced and said that this was the first style of White Cloud swordsmanship, Calm Cloud, and he perfected it. It became much more powerful than the original. This mastery of swordsmanship is simply terrifying. Shu put on his new clothes and was happy about his breakthrough. The peak of stage 6, he was only 1 step away from stage 7. He must have managed to break through during enlightenment. Immediately, the elders came to him. Shu was surprised to see Elder Xiao and Qiao. He wondered what they were doing here. Shu thought, the sword stopped moving, didn't it? There are sound-suppressing formations in the courtyard. From what verse? Xiao turned to Shu and asked, is this his yard? Isn't this the masochist with the innate body from the group stage? He thought. Shu bowed and replied that he was greeting the 2 elders, and said that this was his court. Xiao pointed his finger and asked what happened to him. Shu replied that he was practicing fencing and carelessly got what they were seeing, and then the system popped up and said there was a suspicion of passivity. Shu knew it. They're just underestimating him, aren't they? Then why don't they just say so? Xiao thought that this guy had an innate body and acquired sword intent. How could a guy at the 6th stage of spirit hardening have all this? He has a gift. He shouldn't have languished in the outer court for the last 3 years. He should have been let in the inner court a long time ago. Qiao slapped him and asked, does he think he's tough? Does he lie and not blush in front of his elders? Qiao said that last time he didn't believe in his innate body, admits, and now he says that he comprehended the sword intent. Shu said that this was his home, after all. Who else could have done such a thing if not him? Qiao said that he knew he had developed a rebellious character after coming out of reclusiveness. It's okay to be young and frivolous, but everything must have a limit. Does Shu understand that? One could imagine that all the people he had wronged throughout his life came to take revenge, but the Wang family let him go with the horse, only after destroying his crowbar and not harming his life. Wasn't that how it was? Shu wondered, what's with this old man's imagination? Given his vivid imagination, his horizons were not as broad as theirs. What kind of assailants had come after him in droves? Qiao told Shu to tell him who perfected the sword? Let him forget if he's embarrassed. After all, his house was destroyed. He doesn't even have to give his name, just let him say which direction he went. He and Elder Xiao will find him. Xiao said that they would talk about the cut of the ruined house later. Have you tell them which way they should go? Shu was fed up with this and decided to get them off his back by pointing his finger in which direction the bully had gone. The elders told him not to be discouraged and to brace himself. Shu asked why no one believed him if he was telling the truth. Shu decided that he would go rest at the inn. Lying on the couch, he decided that tomorrow he would go to Lunch's pavilion to get his assignment. Let others deal with them. It's only a few spirit crystals. And after the group stage is over, they give a day off to allow time to recover. The available passive points are enough to pump the spearhead 7 more times. Mastering swordsmanship brought him too much knowledge, therefore, he needs to transform them properly instead of getting them all at once. Shu contemplated pumping in a breathing technique. But he thought it was nonsense. Shu opened the system and saw that he had acquired a level 8 spearhead. Immediately, he decided to test it by hitting the wall with his hand. When he saw the hole in the wall, he said it didn't hurt. The level went up. And with it, the efficiency. This is equivalent to carrying 2 concealed weapons. If he faced the enemy in direct combat, he could turn his fists into blades. On the exiting cloud stage, Elder Xiao spoke as he congratulated them, the 180 warriors that had successfully displayed their talents in the group stage and had grown towards the breakthrough competition. The breakthrough competition will be divided into 18 stages, with the champions of each group stage as the leaders, and the opponents will be chosen randomly by drawing lots. Immediately, Elder Xiao used his medallion. Taking a sheet in his hand, he said that there are only 64 seats in this competition. 3 consecutive victories are required to get a place. Everyone would have 2 opportunities to challenge, including the champions. Xiao shouted to everyone that the competition was starting, and then the guys cheered for Sis and told her to go ahead. But Brother Chao, he must defeat his sister and take the first place. The guy saw and realized that the people around him were at least at the 7th, 8th, 9th, and even 10th stages. How could he, Zhua, stand next to these people, being at stage 3? Zhua told Brother Liu that he is nervous. He is afraid that he is the very first in the Qiansan spiritual palace to reach such a competition with his low level. Liu replied not to worry. He might be the first, but he's not the only one. After all, he also has cultivation at the 6th stage. Did you come into the arena and tell them to shout his name for support, or did they come to boo him? The system immediately showed him the new points he had gotten. Shu thanked the guys for such support. Shu said that he would definitely live up to the expectations placed on him. May they encourage and support him even more. The guys were saying that everyone else had already gone on stage, and he was still hanging around outside. Shu's crazy. Let everyone look at his idiot face, and this is the champ? And they didn't, say the guy. He's wondering too, he's only on stage 6, which is 2 levels below him. How did he become champion? Shu warmed up to the audience, even though he was ridiculed, but he would endure it. Fine, let them mock. Continue to ridicule even more fiercely, the storm will become stronger. The guy went outside and wondered why Shu still hadn't come. Seeing him on the stairs, he wondered what he was doing here. After all, the others are on the stage waiting for the draw, and he hasn't even arrived at the place of competition yet. He became a champion, so now he has to do laps around the stadium and wave his hand. The guy shouted to Shu and waved his hands at him. Shu was surprised to see him and asked, did the competition start so quickly? Shouldn't one do a breathing warm-up after burning incense? The guy asked him, does he do a breathing warm-up? Shu replied that it was like that. He was running, warming up. He needed to stretch his body so that he had the strength to compete. The guy got angry and told Shu to quickly come over to him. Immediately, they headed to the arena. Shu understood that in order to gain passivity points, one had to feel and sense the emotions, actions, and words of the people nearby. It's a shame you can't get anything good in an isolated barrier. It's a shame to lose so many passive points. And then the system said that the spell points were increasing. Shu was surprised and pondered, should it be so obvious? Except she and he aren't here anymore. Judge, the referee showed the table and said that Shu would go up against Di in the battle. Di entered the arena and greeted Shu's brother. Shu looked at her and saw that things were bad now, and it looked like she was going to give up. He still had to earn passivity points. Shu said that showing cowardice in the face of the enemy was taboo. If she escaped without a fight, she would become among the practitioners of spirit hardening, and if she surrendered, there would be a stigma on her life. Dee got excited and thanked him for the instruction. And then the system came out and added his points. The referee immediately raised his hands and said he was starting the fight. Dee immediately swung her sword at him. Shu was surprised and shouted for her to stop. He said that, as the saying goes, a noble man decides matters with words, not force. He will not take out his sword. Shu said that since he didn't need the sword, neither did she. How about a fist fight? Dee replied that she knew he possessed a 9th grade sword called Hidden Bitterness, and she knows that Brother Shu is physically strong, but she has recently created a technique and would like to try it out in battle. Shu was surprised. He had thrown the sword away, and she had grabbed him to kill him. Of course, women are not trustworthy, so he talked. Dee immediately went straight at him with the tip of her sword that Shu decided to fight without and simply dodged her attack. Shu realized for sure that she would be hurt if he didn't use the blade. Shu immediately gave her a slash and she fell to the ground. Dee saw what Brother Shu would do and couldn't dodge as she flew to the ground with her sword. Shu told her to think again. Everything he said was true, he wasn't lying. She doesn't use hand-to-hand combat techniques, so he won't either. He demonstrated a fair hand-to-hand combat technique. People were shouting that Shu was shameless. Shu is so shameless, inflicted a hidden akka. What is he taking the battle with Di for? This Shu doesn't even care about her body. How could senior Di even fight him? If it was him in her place, there was no way he would put up with it. At this time in the bleachers, the guy was thinking, what's the matter with these spectators? All I could hear was how they were making him look like a villain. Shu said that since he was physically strong, he would only use one hand. Shu raised his hands and said that he would fight her with his feet. He was in favor of hand-to-hand combat. And immediately showed her his hands. Di yelled at him to shut up. Shu lifted his foot and told her to think about hand-to-hand combat. Dee realized that she had been rooting for Shu before, but she didn't think he would turn out to be this kind of person. Di didn't put her sword away and applied akkas with it. In a moment, she told Shu to be more careful. Di directly sent him a calm white cloud attack. Shu immediately ran and grabbed his sword. He looked up and watched to see where she would attack him from. And he would be able to dodge her. The guy said there was something about Shu. He even dodged, though he thought he was going to get it. And it seems that Shu possesses the white cloud sword technique. He had heard that Shu had trained for 3 years, and in that time, he had become so proficient in it. Shu decided to use his speed, and in a moment, he made an attack on Di with his sword, and stopped at the last moment. The guys were yelling for Shu to stop. It's his Di. Let Shu fight. If he's going to fight, he doesn't need a wooden sword. Shu decided that he would give her another chance since he had failed to engage her in melee combat. Make her angry so she realizes who she really is. That way he can earn some passivity points from her. Shu said that it was not a bad strike. But the aspiring sword she created only contained a single layer. Once it was blocked, all subsequent actions would be powerless, and she should improve on the first style of calm white cloud. Let her try a little harder. Dee thought what he said made sense. Maybe he's best at fencing, not fist fighting? She had once listened. Before that he had practiced the white cloud sword technique for 3 years, and then the system showed that the gratitude of the glasses had filled up. Shu wondered, is this girl so simple-minded? Does she think that he is mentoring her? Di said once more. Second style white cloud sword technique, twisted cloud, stretching clouds. Shu realized that he had only studied one sword in 3 years. And from the looks of it, he couldn't learn anything from her movements. And then Dee made her attack and Shu immediately dodged with his wooden sword and set it under her cheek. People shouted and called Shu names. And threatened to kill him with a painful death for taking Sister Di away from her, and told him to get his sword out of her face or he would haunt him for the rest of his life. The guys told him to fight to the best of his ability. He wouldn't let him be so gentle with her. Di couldn't say anything and blushed really hard. Shu wondered what was wrong with her. Is she waiting for him to explain? Shu said that the first sword should be connected by a 7 to her previous sword. If she wounded her opponent, it would be necessary to use the power of the sword to suppress him in one fell swoop. And if the enemy breaks through the network of swords, you need to close the ring using the twisted cloud stretching style. Deflect the opponent's attack, then repeat the pass technique and prepare to meet the opponent's next strike. Shu rejoiced again, for he had once again received the appreciation points. Di stepped back and used the third style among the clouds and fog. Shu saw that she did, and with his wooden sword, he knocked the sword out of her hands in 1 second. Shu realized that there was no point in continuing any longer. She had an abnormal look in her eyes, and if they met in battle again, a spark of love might flare up. Shu said that she had lost. Di got excited and said that she thanked him for his guidance. The breakout competition has a time limit, so she'd like to get some more tips in the future. Shu once again received gratitude points and already realized for sure that she was hopeless. The judge came out to say that the competition was over. And the winner of this battle was Shu. Xiao asked, had he practiced the white cloud sword technique? So what he said back then was true. Watching all the battles, Xiao saw that Mo and Chang had won 3 victories in a row. Shu asked, how do they manage to fight so fast? But in truth, only these two can possess this kind of speed. These two are in the top of the top rankings with their innate skills. Shu started looking around and didn't see Su and her friend. But the other girls were shouting that they loved him. The system showed him that the enthusiasm points came right after those girls' screams. Shu was surprised to see the confession and wondered how it had gotten in there. I guess everyone had heard about the wooden sword. Shu held out his sword and asked, do they want it? The girls immediately all went crazy and gave Shu the glasses. He turned around and saw that they were all crazy. The guy walked up to Shu and said he had to go. The referee announced that Shu and Liu would fight in this fight. The guys were saying that Ze had already lost 2 matches. He went up to Liu and said he could do it. Let him throw off this burden and teach a level from boss when at the same time. Stepping into the arena, Shu said that it was him. He didn't think to meet the Quan family's blade. Great, he's a master fist fighter after all, and he likes to fight with his fists the most. Shu was surprised that Liu was silent. He wasn't going to give up too, was he? Shu said that showing cowardice in the face of the enemy was taboo if he ran away without a fight. Liu immediately shouted that he was not going to surrender. Shu rejoiced and replied that he was like a man now. Say, it's going to be a lot of fun in this fight. Liu saw that Shu outwardly was only pretending, deliberately hiding his strength. All the facts showed that he was deceiving everyone. Since he left the recluse, he hadn't even reached stage 5, but all the subsequent words that he bragged about for intimidation suddenly turned out to be true. Immediately, the system said that the suspicion points were dripping. Shu thought, what does that mean? Is there really someone else inside the barrier? It's daytime, after all, and someone is going to intimidate him. Shu told the judge that he suspected that someone unclean had sneaked into the barrier. Let him check properly. The judge said, here we go again. When would it stop already? Shu told him to believe him. There is definitely a 4th person here. It might not even be human. The referee was telling him to stop holding his leg and it's time to go on stage. Get him to calm down. The judge couldn't stand it and in his gruff voice told him to get back on stage. Liu saw that Shu kept up the pretense, holding him up as a mere mortal, unable to discern his pretense. Liu pulled out his clothes and decided to evolve in front of everyone and reached the 10th stage. This was the peak of spirit hardening. Seeing this, Shu thought that Liu was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger in this battle. Liu told Shu that there was no point in pretending. He put his all into it to defeat him. The usual tricks won't work on him. Shu didn't understand Liu. What was he even talking about? Here came the moment of battle as Liu pounced on him at once. Shu stood in front of him and felt nothing. All his blows past his body didn't even touch him. The guy said Shu's phenomenon is a masochist. That guy's nuts. With every fist fight, he misses punches and gets punched in the face. Shu thought, what kind of fist technique is this? Is it capable of harming his innate body? Shu realized that each action only added 2 passive points. It was unscientific. The information panel can't be wrong. Every time you strike your body, it leaves hidden black energy in your body, which is extremely unpredictable. What a dangerous fist technique. He could be thrown off the stage like that. How inconsiderate. Every second could be the last moment. Shu saw that he couldn't even pull his sword out of the ring because of these incessant strikes. Shu was telling Liu to give him a chance. Immediately, Liu heard this and started attacking even more, but Shu told him not to hit him. Shu says he's using a spearhead. And let Liu watch to make sure he doesn't finish him off. Liu saw this attack and didn't expect how this could even happen. He saw that Shu didn't use the fist technique, So how did he manage to slash him during the quick punches? His fist of great dark tribulation strikes with double dark energy. Shu isn't bleeding, so it must be his blood, Liu thought. Liu realized that Shu had broken through his fist of great dark grief with his fingers. But how had he succeeded? Liu asked what kind of technique was that? Shu replied that it was a spearhead. And then the system said there were suspicious points. Shu thought, what was the point of asking a question if Liu didn't believe what he was saying? Then he wouldn't have asked. People have been asking how Shu got out. Can't they understand why Liu stopped? There's blood dripping from Shu's hands. The guy asked for a friend. Is he kidding me? Can't he see Liu's spiritual ability? He has the fist of great dark tribulation on an innate level. People began to ask about the innate spiritual ability because it was extremely rare. How did a disciple from the outer courtyard get the innate spiritual ability? Shu realized that Liu's fist technique wasn't of the lowest level, otherwise he wouldn't be able to hurt him. The dark energy in his body won't discharge. He thinks he's going to get it at the critical moment. He's lucky he has an information panel, or he wouldn't have even noticed he was dead. Shu said that a noble man settles matters with words, not force. How about we stop using fists and switch to wooden swords? Zhe saw and realized that Liu had eaten that thing he told him about. That's why he showed himself so well. The guys laughed at Shu and said that he was so funny. He had forgotten that he had talked about not using a sword last round. Just when things started to go wrong, he immediately forgot what he said. The girls were yelling that Shu was so cute. They can't take it anymore. Liu didn't agree to his terms and immediately decided to attack with his fists. Shu shouted at him to come back. Shu used his technique and said that he was lucky to have a trump card under his sleeves. Liu stopped in a moment and said with fright that his crowning blow was coming. Dark sorrow, let's go. The guys were saying that this battle turned out to be so brutal. What a ruthlessness. Everyone was shouting for Shu to hold on. The judge was saying that if Shu didn't repel Liu's next strike, he would definitely die. Zhuo wondered why he should intervene. Liu filled his strength into one fist and accoveiled Shu in a moment. Immediately, Shu let the water out of his mouth and directly spat at him. Liu didn't stop there, and the paint got in his eyes, and he couldn't hit and missed with the attack. Wiping the paint off his face, he could already feel Shu hugging him from behind and throwing him into a deflection. People were asking that Shu was going to die with him. Liu, at the moment of the fall, shouted for him to let him go. Shu wouldn't let him go, and the Nan cannonball crashed into the ground with him. At this moment, dust rose up and no one could be seen. Shu stood up and said that Liu was amazing. But what kind of fist technique does he have? And he remembers Liu teaching him not to be careless. Liu stood under him and shouted at him to get off him. Shu didn't get up to the last, and then the referee approached him. The judge asked Shu, does he need a break? Shu thought about it and replied that it could be done. The judge pointed his finger at Liu and said that he would need it too. Shu decided to stand up, and immediately the doctors came running and carried him away on a stretcher. The judge asked Shu, has he recovered yet? Shu thought he was messing with him. When would he have had time to recover? Just then, the system jumped in and added his passivity points. Shu realized that the dark tribulation had rushed in and he was seriously injured. There was still one more breakthrough competition left. Elder Chiao gave him a grade 10 medicinal pill, a dark golden pill. Shu took out one of them and decided to breathe in her scent. He was immediately thrown into a shiver. People were asking what it was doing. Is it really a healing elixir? What kind of powerful pill is this? Shu couldn't resist her, and like a crowbar, he fell to the ground and flew into the clouds at this time. The guys asked him what he ate. He's shaking. He's shaking all over. Shu was talking at this time about geese and no problems with his condition. The judge thought, does it look like there is no problem with his condition? The judge said if he couldn't fight anymore, he would take him to heal his wounds. Shu replied not to touch him. After all, he's overly sensitive right now. Geese, geese, geese. The judge held up his hands and thought it best not to touch him. The guy said Shu took an aphrodisiac. He ate it during the competition. Somebody get him to calm down. VRCH immediately went to him and asked the judge if he was all right. The judge asked, is that true? The doctor replied that he did not know what kind of medicinal pill he had taken, but that it had a terrible effect. His body would recover very soon and he would get better. The judge asked, "Will it get better?" The doctor laughed and said it was relaxation. The judge thought that even ghosts don't relax. Shu came to his senses and got to his feet, feeling that he seemed to have recovered, but still everything hurt. Shu opened the system and saw that it had increased dramatically by 3,000. That's how true love is. The referee approached him and asked if he was ready for the last round. Shu replied that they should just give him enough time to regain his breath. The judge said, "That's great. We need to get started, because there's no time anyway." Shu thought, what a dog that judge is. Time's running out and he's asking if he's ready? Does he have to push him around like that? The judge announced that Shu's opponent in this fight would be Wen Chong. Shu immediately thought that this judge wanted him dead, nothing else. People were talking and were surprised that Wen was coming out to fight. After all, Shu had already suffered so much, and here he was given to him. The girl asked the older man guarding the ring. Let him tell her quickly what is going on here. The guy replied that as she already knew, Boss Wen was unlucky on stage number 2. He ended the fight with a draw with Chow and lost in one match. He became the champion and came in second place. The girl asked, "So what of it?" After all, Shu is also a champion. The guy replied that Chow is 2 in the rankings, a master with a berth. Boss Wen, on the other hand, is 7 in the rankings, and half a step away from being born. The girl asked, "Is he that tough?" The guy laughed and replied that she thought that was the end of it. No, Shu is a natural enemy to him. He was told to stop scheming and tell her. The guy said that they already know that Liu is a genius at stage 10, that he almost knocked Shu down, and Wen Chang is his younger brother. And then everyone started to show their emotions in surprise. But that's not all. They know all about Daishin, don't they? Shu thrust his wooden sword twice across that girl's face, and it's Wang Chun who's in love with her. The guy said it's a brain explosion. And now Shu's in trouble, and then Wen Chong, who is the 7 in the ranking of chasing clouds, is called Boss Wen in the outer courtyard, entered the ring. Shu walked up to him and said hello to his younger brother. Chun heard this and was shocked by his words. The guy said that Shu obeyed them. And the guy said that his legs would give out if he started talking to Boss Wen like that. One of the guys laughed and asked the other guy, and he wondered why Shu was still on his feet. Shu is very strong. Chun said Shu isn't bad. Those who touch his people must be psychologically prepared. The referee waved his hand and said thunderously that the contest was starting. Immediately they went off in different directions. Chun thought that the more spiritual cloning techniques accumulated, the more doppelgangers could be summoned at a time, and since Shu is going to keep him at a distance, will take his time to let things come down to the judge's decision. The guys asked, "Shu is an idiot? He doesn't know that Boss Wen's spiritual technique takes time to accumulate? Is he just waiting to die at a distance?" Liu was watching the battle at this time and said that familiar closed eyes. Chun had thought at the moment of battle that Shu was going to display the swordsmanship he had shown at the last moment. Everyone has been revealing their trump cards from the beginning and he's only doing it now. Shu realized that with the state of his body, he could no longer fight a protracted battle. Since a calm white cloud requires accumulation, the judge thought it would end in a deadly battle. If they were not allowed to fight, the outcome would be uncertain. If you let them fight, someone might die. The judge understood the need to let them fight. Doesn't he have a rank 9 spirit sword? Let him take it out and fight with it. Shu didn't bother pulling out his real sword and decided that he would fight him with the wooden one. The guys at this point were surprised and asked, "Is he the one holding a wooden sword?" Chun immediately used his clungcocks and swooped down on Shu with daggers from different directions to leave him less of a chance. Shu closed his eyes for a few minutes and the guys asked, what did he decide to close his eyes before his impending death? After all, he would never be able to open them again. The judge was saying what an idiot. He was already seriously injured, so he should have given up the fight. The guys were saying that Shu's wooden sword was more jubilant here, not Wen Chun's dagger. But what's going on? And then all the warriors had wooden swords in their hands. They did not understand how this could happen. Chun saw this and thought, is this really an acquired sword intent? Is it definitely Shu? Shu decided that there was no need to delay, and with his speed, he swept through all of Chun's clones and tore them apart. June asked, how come? Didn't he temper his body? How could he possess such terrifying swordsmanship? Liu realized that if he hadn't interrupted Shu's attack with the Dark Sorrow technique when he took Hidden Bitterness, he would have been chopped into mincemeat. Shu reached the come all the way down and pounced on Chun. The guy didn't hesitate and used the spiritual barrier. Chun didn't hit him and stopped at the last moment with his sword at his throat. Without giving him a chance, Shu told him to surrender. One sword, one word. The 7th rank chasing clouds were defeated. Shu's legs began to tremble and he realized that he had drained all of his spiritual power after swinging his sword. Let him hold on and not fall. The guys said that 7th in the chasing clouds ranking, Boss Wen from the outer courtyard had lost. Liu had gotten by with an injury, and Boss Wen had lost in swordsmanship. Shu dared to put a wooden sword to Di, but even knowing this, Boss Wen was helpless. Chun could not endure such humiliation and decided to attack him from behind with his dagger in hand. The judge shouted at Shu to dodge. Wen, tell him to stop. The competition is already over, and then the system said to make a hidden attack and points were awarded. And then Shu turned around and attacked first. Everyone was surprised at this moment and couldn't believe such a thing. After all, Shu had killed Chun in front of everyone. Chun felt Shu pierce his chest with his hand. Yes, how was that even possible? Shu was yelling for help to come, and asked Chun why he was helping. Shu took out a pill from his pocket and told Chun to eat it immediately. The judge told him it was useless, he was already dead. Hearing those words about death, Shu was lost in the dimension. After all, he didn't want to do this. Shu thought, is even the life of a spirit tempering master so fragile? Died from being pierced? The judge asked, is this his first kill? Let him get used to it. The judge told him not to worry, it wasn't his fault. Even if he was the first to launch a surprise attack, the fault lies with him because he couldn't stop him. Shu will be all right. Let him return to rest and leave the rest to him. The guys were asking, is Chun seriously dead? This is the first murder in the outer courtyard in 10 years, right? They insist on excluding Shu from the competition. Something like this is unforgivable. That's right, this is a battle between students, not a massacre. The guys were telling one of the guys to shut his mouth. Chun's stealth attack may have failed, but he still pierced him. Shu even gave him a pill, and the referee had yet to call the end, so Wen Chong attacked within the rules. Shu, on the other hand, is an inhuman barbarian. Into the Goose Lake, there is a beautiful view of the outer courtyard of Qianxiang Spiritual Palace, surrounded by weeping willows. The lake is surrounded by heart-shaped white jade railings. The water inside is amazingly transparent and filled with spiritual energy, and that's thanks to the spiritual goose that swims upstream. Elder Chiao raised it with care. Shu had been to this place and said that perhaps a similar thing was true in this world. Life is like a stone. No matter how big it is, it cannot make big waves if it sinks in a goose lake. Shu wondered if he regretted it. No. Shu didn't regret killing Wen by mistake. When he came to this world, killing was destined to become the norm. What he felt and what made him lonely was just sympathy and reflection on the fragility of lives. In his past life, subjected to endless torture in a whitewashed chamber, he still felt the desire to live. Shu valued life more than most people in this world. And now he had ruined one of those precious lives. Once you go for it, you have to be prepared to suffer the consequences, even if they are beyond anyone's control. At the moment, Shu smiled and thought that he had unknowingly broken through to the 7th stage of spirit hardening. He breathed a sigh of relief at the moment, because he had finally killed someone, and he might as well get used to it by now. That night, Shu stayed at the Goose Lake until morning. In the morning, he went home to get some rest. The elder approached him and asked, is he looking at the outer courtyard? Shu was startled by his voice, for he hadn't even expected this. The elder asked him, didn't he want to watch the tournament of chasing clouds? And then Shu turned around and was very surprised and asked, turns out he's that senior? The elder said he felt sorry for him. He heard many geniuses had appeared at the competition. What was the name of that animal? He killed a man, too. Young people have hot blood. But it's okay, he didn't come because of that guy, he came because of him. Shu asked in surprise, him? The elder said, he knows all about him. Elder Xiao was told about the 2 geniuses from the outer courtyard, and also about the sword master that was able to learn the acquired sword intent. Except that he liked Shu more than the others. Shu thought, what kind of nonsense is this old man talking? Mentioned 4 people, 2 of whom were him. The elder said that Shu had an innate body, and he was right. He searched for him for several days, and even went around the entire outer courtyard. Didn't expect him to seem here. As expected from the kid who caught his eye. He has taste. Shu realized that he was contemplating life, not goose watching. The elder said he noticed Shu when he passed by here last night. He watched him all night. He's a very good kid with great determination. Even if he was bitten by mosquitoes or cursed, he didn't even move, didn't even turn around. And he recognizes that Shu is like him in some ways. Shu remembered that in the middle of the night, he often felt a chill on his neck, as if someone was breathing down the back of his neck. An ordinary old man from the Chensan spiritual court? He's definitely a great cultivator. The elder said he was too chatty. Doesn't the guy want to say anything? Shu replied, didn't the old man tell him to keep quiet? I have to disappoint him. The young and hot assassin the old man was talking about is him. He also learned the intent of the sword, and he also possesses the innate body, and his name is also Shu. He's already been mentally traumatized, thank you. He's going to participate in the Chasing Clouds tournament, not watch the battles. The elder grabbed his hand and told him to wait. Shu was telling the elder to let him go. He hadn't even eaten dinner or taken Anu the previous evening. The elder asked, does he really have that much talent? Shu replied that he believed him, so he demanded proof. The elder took something out of his pocket and replied that the boy was good. Speaking confidently like him, so he decided that Shu was telling the truth. And told him to eat it. Shu thought this old man was sick. Came out of nowhere, started praising him, and then pulled out his seed and offered to eat it. The elder told him to eat it. It's all right. It'll hurt, but since he has an innate body, he can endure it. Shu took it in his hands and examined it from every side. The elder told him to eat it. Because it was a useful thing, Shu thought that the old man hadn't given him poison or an aphrodisiac to screw him, had he? He immediately threw it in his mouth and swallowed it. Shu asked him what was next. The elder laughed and replied that there was nothing further. The old man did not communicate with him further and in a moment disappeared before his eyes. Shu didn't understand what it was now, and then Shu started to say that his body was becoming so strange. What is this nasty feeling? Shu shouted for someone to come to his aid, for he was getting worse. Let them save him. The news of Shu committing murder quickly spread overnight throughout the outer courtyard. People were shouting in the arena for them to start already. What was taking so long? Finally, the moment had come. The guy said, who knew? He skipped the first killing in the outer courtyard for Brother Chow and Sister Mo. Elder Xiao came out and said that he thought everyone had heard about the death that happened yesterday. People said that even his name wasn't even mentioned in this incident. They don't want to make a fuss. It turns out that Linfa Pavilion has suspended Shu from the competition. Xiao said that he now wanted to remind them all, the Chensan Spiritual Palace had provided everyone with a comfortable environment to improve, and never wished for anyone's death. Eventually, upon completion of their training, they will have to go out into a world where death on the Holy Spirit continent is commonplace. Every competition is an obstacle in the outside world, so they have to give their best effort, but he also hopes that they can master the measure. This measure is life and death, morality and foundations in their hearts. Xiao wasn't this verbose before, but things had changed now. After all, he was no longer a murderer of tens of thousands of people, but a great elder of Tiansa Spiritual Palace. Xiao said it was time to get to the point. The 64 semi-finalists will face off in the decisive battle. There will be a draw on the light screen. Each group will consist of 2 people. The fight will last no more than 15 minutes. Let them try to give it their best while they have time. Xiao raised his hand up and said that he was declaring the competition open. But then Shu came running in and told them to wait. People were saying he was sick. He was even lucky that Elder Xiao didn't bring him to justice. Was he going to argue? At this time, the judge said, here he comes. It's the same Shu he told me about. Let them look at him. He's obviously going to do something. He's just driving him crazy. He's even willing to bet a spirit crystal that even Elder Xiao won't be able to stop him. One of the judges said it wasn't. The scariest thing about this guy is his unpredictability. You never know what he's gonna do in the next second. Xiao asked, what's wrong? If it's nothing important, believe it or not, he will personally deal with him. Shu told the Chief Justice to help him. He has no idea what that damn old man fed him. As soon as the scarlet seed entered his stomach, a burning aura immediately erupted from there, and several meridians in his body were burned. If this continued, he would simply die. As soon as the tournament opened, the best doctors and pharmacists of the drug pavilion immediately rushed to the wrong place to provide timely assistance. Shu told the head judge to help him. He's taken a drug, suspend him from the competition. He needs to be examined by the medical staff immediately. Xiao thought that Shu had taken a drug. There's no one in this competition who hasn't taken such a thing beforehand, and there isn't even a rule that says he can't use elixirs. Xiao got angry and told him to get out of here. Shu replied that if it wasn't like this, he wouldn't have even come to him. He really needs help. Xiao wondered what was going on. Xiao told him to come over and placed his palm on his chest to feel his body. He took her hand away from his body and she began to burn. The guys asked if he had taken a drug that he could hurt even an elder. It's crazy, he's seriously drugged. And he's letting himself get caught. Apparently, what he said is true. So he took a big dose too. Xiao looked at his hand and asked, sizzling firefly seed? Elder-san is crazy. Doesn't it burn and destroy innately the body? Xiao told Shu that this useful thing is like a treasure to him. There was absolutely no harm from it. Shu realized that not even a god could stop him. Just what did he say about it burning the innate body? Shu told him that he heard everything. Xiao laughed and replied that the guy was very hard of hearing. Xiao sighed and told Shu to go rest. After all, he needs to get through this, and then the system showed that he had received encouragement. Shu realized that it wasn't the words he needed, but the medical staff. He doesn't want to get burned. Shu pondered, why such ruthlessness? It was as if they didn't have enough nursing staff. A family of sizzling fireflies can burn an innate body. And who the hell is Elder-san? For some reason, that name seems vaguely familiar. Shu immediately said that this was an accessory to a crime. That terrifyingly burning aura began to penetrate his Si-Chi as it thinned. So it could also burn his Si-Chi. He doesn't understand why that old man wants him dead. Xiao said something about a treasure first. Maybe the fucking old man wanted him to start perfecting it. Shu immediately remembered Xiao saying that he was destroying his innate body. Shu said that he still had a competition to participate in. What should he do? And then he came up with the idea that perhaps he could get rid of his anxiety in the heat of battle. And this idea seems feasible. And then in the arena, the judge said that Chao would win. Shu, seeing this technique, was surprised that he used ice to win. He thought this guy swung his sword in his direction. A convenient ice blast. Just then, the judge said that Shu versus Zhongfu was coming out next. The guys were also surprised that Shu was coming out. Let everyone keep their eyes open. The masochist Shu comes out. After a couple minutes, Shu came to Xiao and said that he would overpower him and the elder would give him medical attention. Xiao thought, what kind of participant is this? Who does he think the judge is that he runs up to him like this and starts a conversation? At this time, the judge was telling them to just look at him. Elder Xiao had just arrived and he was already bothering him. Xiao told Shu to go back to his seat. Shu said to look at his body, it's heated to red hot. He is also a participant and has the right to receive treatment. Xiao asked, what did he care what he took there before the competition? He would have wanted to give him treatment, but they couldn't say that no matter how top-notch the medical staff was, there was nothing they could do. Shu said that he might not care about something like this, but if he got injured, they would still have to provide treatment. According to the rules, they would have to restore it to its best condition. Xiao told him to get out of here. Shu immediately shouted for Zhongfu to quickly approach him. It was time to start their battle. Shu lost his temper and asked, where is Zhongfu? Let him go up to the arena and fight him. The guy said he thinks if you don't admit defeat, you'll regret it. This is Shu, a famous dark horse with a high reputation after two geniuses. Let the kid look at him, he's drugged up too. Didn't he see him kill Wen? Let him not act presumptuously. If he goes up there, he'll just be torn to pieces, and then everyone will focus on his mangled body. The boy replied that he had defeated the genius yesterday. Would it be embarrassing to admit defeat right after meeting him? The other guy asked, what's there to be ashamed of in front of outsiders? The guy replied that he probably couldn't even penetrate his defense. The second guy, leaving, told his friend that he was a fool. Shu asked, is he Zhongfu? Shu saw that he was tall and muscular, and his fists were the size of a punching bag. Great, so he wouldn't have to hold back in a fight. Fu said that he welcomes Elder Shu, he perfects the golden body so his defense is excellent, and hopes that Brother Shu will not refuse advice. Shu was surprised to hear about the golden body. Isn't it a protective spiritual technique? He's separating it like hell. Why is he even perfecting this technique? He's already got an awesome physique. And then Xiao said that the competition was starting. Shu realized that he needed to force his opponent into action, or else his plan would go to waste. Fu smiled at Shu's nods, and decided to use the golden body technique. Shu also got into the same pose with him and started trolling him. Guys were asking what those two are doing in the middle of a contest. What the hell? Fu's golden body technique is his last counterattack? What does Shu do? Doesn't he have any trump cards? Let him start attacking before time runs out. Xiao looked at them and thought, what's wrong with them? The competition was already in progress. He told the contestants that the time for the competition was 15 minutes. Shu saw that Fu was determined. He seemed to be planning to do nothing. So his plan went smoothly? Would he really have to engage in battle to release the heat in his body? He could attack, but he's afraid he won't make it. Shu asked Xiao if he wanted his help. Xiao laughed. Shu said that believe it or not, if he attacked, Fu might die. Fu realized that if there were hard feelings between them, let them decide for themselves. Why are they bringing him into this? Xiao told Shu to attack already. If Fu dies that he lost the argument. He thought that this boy also dared to threaten him. Fu realized that his business was bad and he was no bet. He is a simple and living man like all of them here. The judge said that Elder Xiao is angry. Only Shu is capable of such a thing. He can even afford to talk to the elder like that. Shu asked Xiao, is he sure about this? Shu immediately released the energy from his hands and a mist formed around them. Shu said that he had taken a drug and no one could handle him. Xiao smiled and asked him, is that it? At this time, Fu realized that he was in danger and needed to be rescued. After all, he could die too. People said that Fu had won a 3-win streak in the breakthrough competition, but in front of Shu, he couldn't even move. Fu told Shu to show leniency, let him not take what he said seriously. Let him save face. Shu realized that they didn't want to treat him themselves. Shu told him to enjoy the last moments of his life. Xiao saw that he thought Shu was just joking, but what if he meant it? Immediately, Shu attacked Fu right in the chest. Was Shu surprised at the fact that Fu was able to withstand his 5-point punch? And now since the opponent's defense could withstand the blow, there was no need to save himself. Let Fu be saved. Fu saw his strength and said that he had to endure. He will not be disgraced at all if he admits defeat after such a blow. Shu looked at him angrily and said, one punch, one palm. And nothing else is needed. At the last moment, Fu shouted that he was giving up. But it was already too late, for Shu had charged the entire clip of the attack. Before he could even touch the target, Fu flew out like a cork and sealed himself into the ground from the force of the blow. Fu caught fire in the moment from this and Xiao immediately shouted to the doctors to get him help immediately. The doctors immediately ran to him and began to extinguish him with their own forces, because he could have been burned alive. Shu felt the burning force in his body disappear slightly as he struck out. Even though it hurt, at least he was still breathing. Shu told Xiao that he had stopped his hand, otherwise he would have died. People said that he really only struck one blow with his palm. Fu is not only pathetic, but a laughing stock. Made it all the way to the 64 semi-finalists and ended up losing to a guy, but also in their minds was that maybe it was all the drugs. Just let them look at his incandescent air waves. It was immediately clear that it was not part of his own powers. Shu left the arena and opened the system thinking, how did they rise to 43 so quickly? 003? How did he get so many? After all, yesterday after the breakthrough competition, they had only reached 10,000. How did they grow so fast in just one morning? After receiving the information about the burning firefly seed, Shu was surprised. After eating it in the morning, his body felt like it was on fire all the time, and from the system's point of view, it was considered an attack. After 3 hours, Shu reflected that there were 60 minutes in 1 hour. And there were 60 seconds in a minute, totaling over 20,000 seconds. Over 20,000 passivity points. The judges approached him and asked him what was wrong. Shu stopped them and asked, could they tell him how many seconds there were in a day? The judge replied that there were 86,400 seconds in a day. When Shu heard these numbers, he was completely surprised. According to the judge's instructions, regardless of his status and requirements, one should simply ignore him, treating him as a child. As expected of the judges, they did not fail. Shu sniffed the pill again and said that this kaijin would soon be over by now. The power of the seed is extraordinary, but what successful person is not accompanied by intense pain? Once he focuses his attention on it, can he enjoy the waste? Shu said that if the judge goes to Elder Xiao, that head judge on the stage, let him ask him for some kaijin pills. And let him remember to take them back. The judge thought, what is Shu thinking about the pills now? Shu said he would tell them the three-sort secret, let them memorize it. First, if he doesn't agree, have him say the nursing staff refused to give them to him. He's a participant too, so he may not be able to cope without them. The judge thought, who has the guts to talk to Xiao like that? He's an elder of Linfa Pavilion, not a vegetable seller. Secondly, Shu said, if still agree, have him convey that Shu remembered that he was an accomplice to the crime. The staff member told him to go himself. Shu asked, why would he go? The employee has to do his job, after all. Later, he would face another battle, and they should know that the higher a person's status, the more special their personality is, and there is no reason why they can't be of assistance. An employee has seen how hard it is for him. He wants to change jobs. He's really fed up with it. Shu worked very hard to accomplish something, and here he was able to go to the tip of innate to level 1. Shu realized that when there was no money, he could never imagine the happiness of wasting it. It's only been 3 days, and he's already got over 40,000 passive points. And he got rid of the excess. Shu said that one should test the power of the spearhead after pumping it up to innate level. Immediately, he swept his hand over the ground, but he missed a little, and the beam of the point passed over his foot and cut his new shoe. Shu understood that every passive skill pumped to an innate level changed significantly, and now that the sharpness has become innate, every part of his body is exceptionally sharp. A true artifact for an assassin that can't be defended against. Shu realized that if he kicked his opponent during the fight, he would simply chop him in half. Since it's a passive skill, there's no need to cast a spell, no foreplay. So how do you defend against it? And then it occurred to him that if his opponent could stop a kick with his foot, could he stop a kick with his hair? He immediately raised the crystal in front of him and thought, was it normal to be bedazzled by such a brilliant idea? From how a passive skill is used, it can become an active skill. A little scary even. Shu decided that he had spent 10,000 passivity points, and if it didn't work out, he would use some more. Shu immediately decided to put all his keys in the system and lined them up in order. Shu prepared himself and shouted loudly that it was time to go. And used his incarnation of luck. Immediately, the system replied that she thanked him for visiting. Shu was confused and asked how that was. He fell to the ground because he didn't understand how such a thing could even happen, and not award him any honors. The servant came over and saw that Spy was mad, slashing the floor, and with his hair. He was having fun, so why did he suddenly fall down? This is very important. His servant jerked him left and right and yelled at him to come to his senses and wake up. After all, hadn't the Chief Justice said Shu was kind of poisoned? It was the first time he had ever seen someone use their hair like that. Shu tells the boy to leave, because he doesn't want to see him. Let him be alone. Shu squatted down and let a tear fall as he pondered that whole 10,000 passivity points. He had just blown the money to the wind. He was bullying him, but he still has 30,000 left. How about a breathing technique and a sword technique? But he refused and said he didn't believe in 10 more failures. Shu took out all his keys and said that he wouldn't shit himself this time. After all, he has the epitome of luck exists. Shu said that he couldn't afford to be left with nothing. And then the system said that a better basic passive life cycle skill. Shu rejoiced and said that he spent 20 keys to get 1 passive skill with the level acquired. Was it worth it? Definitely worth it, said Shu. After all, you can pump up a level in the future, or you can pump it up casually, but without abilities, it's all a fart. And then the servant watched him and said he was crazy. He wondered how much happier a man could be alone with himself. Could he not keep up with the youth of today? Shu opened the system and saw that he was in the basic passive skills section. Basic passive skills might not be as functional. Just look at the breathing technique in the same section. The life cycle, literally, the continuous life force. If that's the case, wouldn't it be of the greatest help to him right now? The sizzling firefly seed has energy the size of a fingernail, but the energy itself is so terrifying that it can't even be quantified. Blood, vein, bone, all the cells contained therein are subject to the burning power. Blood and flesh were burned to charred, and meridians were baked to destruction. Thanks to the breathing technique, he only needs to take a breath of the Kaijin pill to recover instantly. Now the Kaijin pill had been depleted and the muscles and bones in the body had collapsed, but were now repairing themselves. This is the life cycle effect. Shu said that the role of the new passive skill was to heal wounds. This kind of help was simply incommensurable. He still had 20,000 passive points left, which could be exchanged for 5 skill points to swing that skill. Shu was able to raise his life cycle to level 6. And recovered from his wounds in less than a minute. Shu said that it was a divine skill. Shu decided not to stop there and used 5 skill points to pump up. And was able to go to life cycle innate at level 1. Shu realized that the resolution rate of the sizzling firefly seed had aligned with the life cycles. Struggling with each other, they split in half. A frightening recovery speed, Shu thought. The sizzling firefly seed only took half a day to consume 2 Kaijin pills, which were 10 pieces in total, and his life cycle recovery rate is equal to his. Doesn't that mean he has more to recover? How many resources can he save that way? And then Shu swung his sword across his arm and the guy was saying that he passed out for no reason and then started injuring himself? Shu is definitely crazy. Shu saw that with the life cycle at the innate level, recovery was faster than with the Kaijin pills. The servant saw that he was indeed able to obtain the Jingjin pills from Xiao. And 10 vials as well. It's like a dream. He got all these pills for free. Shu saw him, smiled and asked, he had come after all? With 10 vials in his hands? Shu asked him, isn't it cool? Is it the highlight of his life to talk to a lean far pavilion elder like this? The servant answered nothing and waved his head. Shu said, will there be something else? There's something else cool. It will all be his. The servant replied that they were all Shu's brothers and he couldn't take them all. Shu said it's okay, let him take them all. Shu asked him again, is he sure he doesn't want to? The servant replied that he was sure he did. And then a second one came and Shu told him to come over here and it's all his now. Shu told them to be calm. After all, it's just them here. No one will know that he separated them. He's not going to play a prank on them to ruin their mood at all. Shu said 2 vials per person, non-negotiable. Let them take them immediately. Shu gave it to them in his hand and told them to take it. And then Xiao shouted to Shu to come up to the arena immediately. He immediately heard this and immediately stood up. The others said they would never have thought he was such a man, generous, handsome and thinks outside the box. Even though he goes crazy sometimes, it's cute in its own way. In the square of exiting clouds, the main arena came out Shu versus Ju. In the last battle, they looked at each other and Ju said that acquired sword intent and innate physique. And he recognizes its power. Ju held out his long sword and said that his goal was to rank first in the rankings. Therefore, he would fall from his sword. The guy from the sky looked at the battle and said that it was an acquired blade intent. When did Ju have time to master it? And seeing his equanimity, it's clear that Shu is in danger. With that blade intent, he could make someone with innate nervousness. He thought his words about first place were empty bluster, but now he sees that they are not. Xiao thought that the guy had been hiding his abilities all this time and hadn't shown his full strength in the qualifying stage and the breakthrough competition. The boy thought to himself, what is this situation? Acquired blade intent? Also calm like this? He only wields the first style of calm white cloud, draining the spiritual power of the sword. Ju said that a loser can't lose. Shu told him that he shouldn't be so tongue-tied, and then people started making fun of Shu for being the old man in the outer courtyard. But, in fact, the only one left from that group. The guy asked him, isn't Shu's real big brother? Theoretically, he is, but he has been in the outer courtyard for 3 years. The other guy replied that he didn't know what the explosive effect was related to, but it felt like someone had possessed the dark horse. Guy said that thinking about it from that perspective, he's just as strong as Mo and the others. They're all like little brothers and sisters to him after all. Xiao put his hands up and said that the competition was starting. Ju said immediately for him to stop. Xiao said, well, what kind of contestants? It's Shu's bad influence, each of them is so strange. Ju said that there was one thing he wanted to clarify before the fight. Yesterday's incident, attacking him sneakily, was a shameful act, but Shu didn't have to take his life. The punishment would have been enough, but he still commits ruthless murder, and it seems the opponent in front of him named Shu is a despicable and unscrupulous villain. Shu replied that this was the very reason he wanted to voice before the fight, making him look like an assassin. Jin said he wasn't talking about killing, he just wanted to explain everything. Shu asked, did he see what happened in the arena then? Did he get a good look? He doesn't know anything, he just came in and started talking nonsense, throwing mud at him. If he says he did it on purpose, how would he look at him? Jin waved his hand and replied that no, it wasn't like that at all. Shu told him to stay focused. He knows his next sentence will be him just clinging to his words. Jin replied that this was not what he wanted. Shu said that people like him always stand on the moral high ground and blame others, and never think that those very words are like a sharp blade to others. Shu asked him, well, why doesn't he speak when he should speak? And speaks when he doesn't have to? If he can't speak, does he take action? Shu saw through that Ju is the type of person who thinks with his muscles. Because of his burgeoning sense of justice, he is very fiery, seeing only the surface of the picture. Shu saw that Ju looked hesitant and ready to admit defeat. He changed his mind. Shu said to Ju he might look at everything superficially, but as a worthy spirit tempering master, once he enters the arena, there is no way he should admit defeat. He will make it clear to him, if he does not engage in battle, he will be tabooed. If he runs away without a fight, he will be humiliated as a master of tempering the spirit. If he surrenders, he will put a stain on his life. Ju told Shu that he would accept his instruction. And then Xiao was very surprised because Shu's plan had worked. Immediately, Shu and Ju didn't drag it out and started throwing punches at each other. Ju got excited after the first hit and said that was great and could continue. Shu realized that for the first time, his innate body was not pleasing him with its strength, and even his efforts were in vain. If he couldn't face him, the acquired intention of the hard steel blade. If with his short sword he faces his long blade, his face would be stained with blood. Fighting him with his innate point can chop him in half. So he uses sword techniques to hone his acquired sword skills. Ju immediately pounced on him. At this time Shu entered under his subconsciousness and immediately countered his strength against him in a moment of attack. Ju didn't see it and was still able to dodge his blade and step aside slightly to gain acceleration. Shu felt his advantage and no longer dodged the attacks, but struck out on his own. Ju didn't give up either and countered Shu's attacks very well, that even they were on par. The guy said that the acquired intent of the blade versus the acquired intent of the sword, they are so thrilled by this. If there is an accident, either Ju's throat will be blocked or Shu's legs will be broken. An exciting battle. Ju was telling Shu to face his Nine Tides blade. It's a continuous blade technique. One wave is higher than the other, getting stronger and stronger. Ju immediately raised his waves the moment Shu watched this whole spectacle and entered his mind. Ju didn't pull it all and directed that water straight at Shu. Everyone looked at the arena and didn't realize what would be left of them. Xiao was also looking at the battle and didn't get distracted for a single second. After all, this was a magnificent battle for him. Ju entered this water with his sword and was on his way to attack. Shu stood still and waited for the right moment for him, and then the system came out and said that Shu was attacked and his passivity points increased. He realized that Ju's skill in blade intent was unmatched. It can do serious damage to even a minor cut, and wounds from the power of the tide are even harder for ordinary people to heal. Shu was glad that the life cycle's terrifying healing ability had revealed itself in time. Worthy of a basic passive skill, blood regenerates at an astonishing rate. Jin chuckled and asked Shu, he's not going to give up, is he? The power of the Nine Tides blade. Not to mention his innate abilities. The boys were screaming for Shu to hold on. Let him get up and get rid of him, let him not knock himself out of the arena. Shu's body was covered in blood, but it was all an illusion. He tried his best to pay a lower price for the chance to survive the blade. At this frantic pace, the life cycle had almost completely restored his condition. Using Ju's sword techniques, he constantly repelled all of his attacks and saw what he had learned. Shu decided in a moment that he would invest 2 skill points to pump up his sword wielding. Immediately, his level rose and his sword began to glow. Shu didn't spare him, and at the appropriate moment, he launched a crushing attack that made Ju fly backwards. The guys asked, "Did you break through now?" It seems that with the intense suppression, he made a strike reflexively. And that last sword strike was very similar to White Cloud's second style of swordsmanship. Shu had made a breakthrough, and this sword was the beginning of Di. However, he had never practiced the second style, so he changed his swordsmanship in a hurry. Xiao was surprised that Shu decided to show off his creativity right in battle and changed his swordsmanship technique. Shu told Ju to attack without stopping. Ju replied that was exactly what he wanted to do. Ju used the same attack again and raised the water above his head and directed it at Shu. Shu wondered if this Ju had any other trump cards. He wouldn't be able to match this technique given his current level of swordsmanship, and then Shu decided that he would use 3 skill points and pump up his sword wielding. Ju looked at him and didn't understand what Shu was doing. People were asking what was the matter? Could Shu use Ju's blade technique? But how is this possible? Isn't Ju's swordsmanship style the spiritual ability of a mountain-turning immortal? How did Shu manage it? Shu couldn't steal from the master on stage, could he? And now it's clear, Shu is the real monster. Shu used the calm White Cloud version number 2 attack. And Ju matched him with the flipping immortality mounts. Xiao looked at the fight and said, he hesitated for so long only to discover the sword? He's already a dead man. Shu stepped into this attack and redirected it in the other direction with his sword so that it wouldn't hit him. Shu thought, what kind of demonic technique is this? He turned his innate moving mount against him. Although this style had exhausted his spiritual power, he only needed to manifest another blade to neutralize the shockwave of the immortal moving mountain. Ju saw that Shu's swordsmanship was like the antelope's horns leaving no trace. Such an immortal with a sword is comparable to his grandfather who put him on the path of the blade. Ju asked, is it possible to use a sword like this? Shu saw that Ju seemed to have forgotten that he was in a battle right now. Immediately, Ju's forehead was bleeding from the last attack. Shu understood that this was a fight, so he needed to respect his opponent. Immediately, Ju made that very breakthrough. Ju couldn't control it, and with his strength, he pushed Shu away from him, who flew backwards. Shu wondered what else it was. Breaking through to innate level? Is that bastard cheating? Shu realized that Ju was already a demon at level 10 acquired. How terrible would he be at innate level? Ju said that he thanked senior brother Shu for his leniency. He had behaved rudely. Getting hit with the sword, he finally realized that Elder Shu was actually a noble man. And then Xiao heard all of this and said that the competition is over. Shu wins this battle. Ju thought he was talking about his opponent's cruelty before the fight started, but he ended up getting his life back from the cruel Shu. Ju gave his name and said that he had decided that he would become Shu's friend. Shu realized that Ju had broken the barrier during his breakthrough to innateness. The information panel immediately became filled with information, but Shu didn't care about that. At this moment, he wanted to hurry back and figure out his swordsmanship. Xiao saw that immortal sword, antelope horns that left no trace. He completely abandoned his spiritual abilities and forgot about swordsmanship, using his creativity and reaction in battle to calculate the opponent's strikes. Isn't that the strongest state of development mentioned by the 8th immortal swordsman? Xiao saw and realized that this was the ascension of the shadow of the strongest swordsman. Immediately, he began to calm down the fans. Xiao raised the medallion and said that the competition was over. Everyone saw with their own eyes who was the winner. At this time in Goose Lake, Shu thought that in the battle with Di that day, the opponent's sword seemed to be full of weaknesses. That's why he thought Di wasn't very good at swordsmanship. When he thought about it, he realized that he was superior to ordinary people. Just how did he manage to evenly learn the Tao of the blade? Ju is the only one who was able to put pressure on his creative thinking. After all, simply using creativity in combat seems more sensible and natural than using spiritual abilities. Shu realized that if he had a sublime understanding of the path of the sword, perhaps he should continue moving in the same direction, but obviously, he didn't have that option. At this time, something indescribable flew over Dan Tian, but it was like a meteorite. Shu said that one would have to completely purify this thing, otherwise even with the life cycle, the body would still be fine for a while, but the cultivation would be destroyed. Shu opened the system and saw that in the battle with Ju, he had used 5,000 points to pump up his sword wielding, and there should have been no more than 5,000 points left in reserve. However, after roasting for more than 3 hours, the passive points had increased by more than 20,000. Shu called that old man names for setting him up, and decided he was gonna perfect that shit all night. Shu drank the pill and decided that he would put 5 skill points into the breathing technique. Immediately, he raised it to level 6, but he didn't feel any change after pumping for 5 levels. Perhaps this is the only passive skill that doesn't react to pumping, but the breathing methodology is very intimidating. He hadn't planned on pumping it at all, particularly to the innate level, but there's no way to do that now either. If he learns to perfect the sizzling firefly seed, the Kaijin pill will fail and he will freeze to death. It was the pill inside him that began to take effect, and the effect was very strong, for Shu's face was bleeding, but it was as if ordinary spiritual power possessed the attribute of fire. He had mastered the power of the attribute at an acquired level that only innate masters comprehended. If he could refine it, wouldn't he be able to defeat innate masters with his acquired foundation? Shu thought that the old man had fed this thing to him with good intentions. If he could ignite the seed of sizzling fireflies, his strength could increase rapidly. Shu asked himself, how could he increase his speed? Maybe he could improve it by pumping up his breathing technique, and then Shu realized that it was a breathing technique. This skill was not related to mental ability at all. After all, it was a basic passive skill. Perhaps it has other uses. Shu began to repeat about his breathing technique and pondered. Shu realized that he had only used inhalation in his breathing technique before while improving and healing his wounds, and had never even half-used exhalation. Since it is possible to inhale energy by absorbing the power of elixirs, can the energy in the seed of the sizzling fireflies be removed from the body by releasing energy? Shu thought for a moment and decided that his heart shouldn't prevent him from taking action. Immediately, he decided to inhale and exhale. Inside, his energy began to overflow and release his blood outward through his mouth. The elder immediately stood on the tree and felt that Guy was dying. He must be helped immediately. Shu didn't stop there and decided to go all the way. At the moment his half-body started to freeze. Shu didn't give up, and at the last moment, he succeeded and the chain of energy was broken. Shu took the pill in his hands and breathed it still deep into his system. Everything around him began to crumble and turn to dust. The elder immediately ran up to the place and watched from afar what was going on here. And immediately he went under the water. Shu came to his senses and looking at himself asked, was he able to survive? But the life cycle along with the breathing technique fully manifest the terrifying recovery from the Kaijin pill. Shu said that he had gotten too powerful a restorative power. Pain like pain. Torment like the drag of the first cigarette. He decided that he wouldn't procrastinate and get it over with as soon as possible. He would start perfecting the power of the seed directly. The old man watched and wondered what kind of monster he was. Can't he feel pain? He had accidentally discovered this treasure, and only by possessing a strong will did this boy have a great future ahead of him. Upon hearing these explosions, the Linfar Pavilion's law enforcement guards ran up. The old man immediately stepped in front of them and told them to get out. The guards were surprised and asked, Deputy Chief? When did Elder San return to the city? The older man told the others to shut up and kneel down and say that everything would be accomplished. San realized that Goose Lake was destined to be calm this night, but the white jade railing was in need of repair. At noon the next day, the guy asked the others, the spiritual palace was doing renovation last night? It's so noisy, can he even hear him? The guy replied that it was in the direction of Goose Lake. His yard was nearby and someone was practicing martial arts there. If it weren't for that, he would have thought a foreign enemy had invaded. The other guy said he hadn't heard anything, even though he too lives near Goose Lake. And then the guy apologized and said that he was just remembering that he had a soundproof formation installed. There's nothing you can do about the fact that he has money. Shu heard all this and realized that after a night of cultivation, the flames of the sizzling fireflies had completely disappeared and he was able to break through to the peak of stage 7. A breakthrough is useful, but not necessary, Shu said. He's so sleepy. He trains on weekdays and breathes while he sleeps. He hasn't slept in 2 days, he's still getting used to it. And then a guy came in and told Shu to wake up. It was already his turn. And immediately the system added points to his scare. Shu woke up and asked the guy why the beating. The servant replied that the competition had already begun. The fans were already shouting for Shu to enter the arena. They were calling him the undefeated champion. Xiao had already lost his temper and shouted at Shu to move faster. And then he went up against Li, at the 10th stage of spirit hardening. Li said that if Shu didn't fight, it would be taboo for him. Don't fight and run. What's behind this? Li said she watched him at the competition, he's so cool. Will he give her an autograph? Immediately, the system awarded him points for admiration. It was unexpected for Shu to find an admirer among the competitors. Xiao raised her hands and said that the contest was starting. Shu decided to concede to her to attack first, and then Li said she was giving up. Shu was surprised. After all, she had asked his line first and then decided to give up. What kind of groupie is she that she won't let him earn passivity points? Li said that Zhong was still lying unconscious in the medicine pavilion and could not participate in the ranking fight. That's why she's not going to fight him. He wants to play a ranking fight. Xiao said that the competition is over, the victory is for Shu. The guys said they didn't even move. What about the fight? He wants to see Shu perform. The guy said he thought Li did the wise thing. She's in the 10th stage. There must be no way Shu could have won with his stage 7. Li held out her brush to him and asked for his autograph. Shu sighed and was surprised by such a fan and asked her where to sign. Li showed her palm and said right there. Shu couldn't refuse her and left her autograph. And then from the podium, the girl started yelling for Li to get off Shu's back. After all, he's her future husband. Li started trolling her and told her that she wasn't practicing well herself, so let her be silently jealous. Shu signed her autograph and told her not to give up on anyone else when she met next, or it wouldn't be good. Li couldn't resist his words and blushed, saying no more. She looked at her hand and thanked him. Li immediately ran away out of joy. Shu shouted at her to take her spiritual brush. A satisfied Li replied that she was giving it to him. At this moment, Shu and Xiao were surprised by this turn of events, and then coming out of the arena the girl attacked her and told her that from today onward she was her sworn enemy. She's gonna kick her into the air. Li showed her the autograph and asked if she was still going to kick around. The girl cried and replied that she was jealous. She wants to cut off her arm and take it for herself. In the waiting area, Shu thought he was already in the quarterfinals. According to the schedule, there would be one more fight today, and if he won, everyone would have to fight for the championship tomorrow. Shu thought, should he take the championship title? Ju's fighting power peaked at the peak of acquisition. Just how strong would he become with his innate level? Innate is actually a commonly used term. It contains the 3 realms of Sod life, without dwelling, and exaltation of spirit. After the 10th stage of spirit hardening, the spirit hardening master comprehends the heavenly path and opens the garden of life in the purple palace. If successful, the power of the innate attribute can be awakened. As for what the power of the innate attribute is, we can only say that it is mysterious and varies from person to person. But there are a total of 5 elements that also consist of perception. These include the Chao Frost Sword and the Ju Inborn Cutting Blade. But while his passive skills can be utilized as innate spiritual abilities, there is a limitation on the very plus most. Even if the rest of us do our best to get a championship spot, it seems unrealistic. And now right now he has 5 passive skills, 3 of which are already innate level, and the remaining 2 are at level 6 waiting to be pumped. And last time he managed to draw a life cycle, and also got 3 passive keys, and then bought 7 more keys to do 10 spins at once. Shu decided that he would use the other key as well, and pressing it used his incarnation of luck, and then the guys were watching him and said, "Here he comes again." And he told the other one to get the rescue tools ready. The servant told the guy to wait, because he wanted to watch too. The boy told him to hurry up and watch what they would do if something happened to them. Shu saw that the system just thanked him for visiting, and gave him nothing. Shu asked the guys, what were they up to? The guys went up to him and asked, is he okay? Shu laughed and asked, what could have happened to him? But because of that broken system, it was getting harder and harder to get anything. Fortunately, he had prepared in advance, so he wasn't startled or fainted. Shu told them not to understand the noise and leave. The guy told the other guy that it didn't look like his body was overheating, so the gloves weren't doing him any good. The other guy replied, who knows, maybe he really did wear them. And they kept watching him anyway. Shu said it was a cheat. He just dropped 10,000 passive points like a stone into the sea. And 2 keys on top of that. When he first used the roulette wheel, one of the 3 wrenches dropped the point, and more would come afterward. But what now? Shu said that they could exchange for 8 more keys, and continued to spin the 10. And shouted that they went to realize their luck. Just then, a sign came out and said that Shu had obtained an enhanced passive skill. Shu jumped up with joy and cracked the ceiling with his head. The boy said that the man was generous, but sick in the head. The servant also said to take the elixir, and afterward smash the pew and ceiling, and then fix everything out of their savings. The guy said he was a good man. There's only half of him left. They saw that Shu couldn't get out and wondered if they could help him. Shu realized that having broken through the ceiling he could see nothing, but in fact somehow he could see the two worried people below. To be precise, the radius is only a few meters, further the image is blurred. Shu smiled his smirk and said, "That's how perception is. Isn't this passive skill too strong?" The figures just appear in his mind. This kind of thing can't be defended against by assassins who are going to kidnap a girl. That's a useful skill. The guys asked him if he could get down. Shu replied that he could easily go down, he didn't need to carry a ladder. And then he jumped down from the ceiling, and then the system said that spell points had been added. Shu thought that he would use 10 skill points and put it into perception. Raising his vitals, Shu understood that the range of perception had expanded to dozens of meters, and the picture became clearer. Shu immediately saw him being watched again. The guy asked, "Did Shu have eyes in the back of his head?" Scared the parasite out of him. Does he know they're watching him? Shu realized that he could clearly see their conversation and actions. He had noticed them peeking at him before, but he didn't know what they were talking about or what they were doing. This is tantamount to putting a CCTV camera directly into your head and providing a picture directly into your consciousness. Just then, Shu lit up and said, "Another imba." He still has 20,000 points left, so he'll procure 9 keys for now. He'll add the remaining ones and get 10. Shu said to keep doing twists. Another skill might fall out next, and then Shu put down the key and spoke to let the embodiment of luck help him. Let the storm rage even stronger. The system immediately gave him nothing and thanked him for visiting. And then the servant and the guy agreed and said it was time for them to grab him. The guys were dragging him around and saying he was feeling bad again. Let the servant support him. Shu asked them what they were doing to him. The servant came up to him abruptly and told him that if he hadn't covered his mouth with his hand in time, he would have lost his first kiss. Immediately, the system added his passivity points and Shu decided that he would go outside and watch the battle. Xiong said loudly that the battle was over and Mu was winning. The guys said that they definitely didn't expect something like this. The guy was saying how high he was thrown dozens of meters away. "Oh my god, Jin is falling. There's someone at the place where he fell." Shu Ying understood what was going on. Even the barrier in the waiting area had been destroyed. And then Shu looked back and saw that it was someone's head. Shu immediately didn't play with him and sent him back into the arena with a leg kick. The guy said that this kind of thing was normal for Shu. It seems that after Boss Wen's surprise attack, he started to refine his one-handed killing technique, piercing through the heart and skull, and then the system immediately awarded him points of admiration, praise, and contempt. Soy said his hands were clean, God is his witness. You can't crack a good watermelon without a good punch. He was immediately given outrage points by the system. Shu said that Guy would be brought to his senses by the medical staff. He ran into him during his fight. He's taking offense. Shu's boys thought what he was up to and stopped him and asked him what he was doing. Don't let him come any closer. After all, the guy is wounded, disabled. Shu said that he could feel his resentment towards him. The boy was surprised and thought, how could he feel that? The guy yelled for them not to leave him and led this Shu away. Shu laughed and said it was no big deal. He was just concerned about whether he was really handicapped now. The guy tells him not to worry, he's fine. And asks for another place for treatment. And then Shu laughed and Xiao said that Shu's next match is against Chao. Shu looked at his stats and was very surprised by them. Shu asked them, are they serious? The probability of facing an innate master in the quarterfinals was quite high. The system showed that he was being mocked. Shu could see the gloating written all over this guy's face. Does he think he'll just bitch about it like that? This hatred is like an echo. Chao won't necessarily be better than him, okay, asshole? The boy asked Shu what he was up to. The guys were yelling at him to stop immediately. Shu asked this handicapped man what he was trying to accomplish. The guy saw his medical staff running away and yelled at the others to get him out of here. Shu grabbed him and said he was sorry, he shouldn't have hit him. But it's okay, he'll set the bones and give the pill to Kai Jin, he'll be fine. The guy was indignant and asked Shu why was he picking on him. He was yelling for help and begged to not be left with him. The healers looked at him and said, "What a demon this Shu is." At this time, a girl with a smile on her face entered the ring. Mu smacked him on the head and told him that Elder Xiao was calling him. Shu replied that she should wait, he needed his bones set. Mu said that he was already dead. Shu replied that it wasn't so, he could have died by taking the Kaijin pill. Mu asked what was the point of letting him smell the medicine but not letting him take it. And then she remembered that he didn't know how to breathe, did he? At this time, foam was already coming out of the guy's mouth. Shu immediately threw a pill into his mouth to save him. Xiao yelled for Shu to get up. Shu turned around and looked at the girl and asked, "And she?" Mu looked at him with red cheeks and greeted him. Shu understood and said hello to her and immediately said goodbye. Shu realized that this was the quarterfinals, the third fight. Shu versus Chao. Shu stepped in front of Chao and asked, "Is this an innate attribute power?" Shu understood that her own strength could affect her nature, so she was unpredictable and dangerous. They stood against each other and interjected with glances. The girls shouted that the three men standing under the snowfall were adorable. Shu told the judge that Chao is cheating. The competition hasn't even started yet and he's already influencing the situation here. It's not fair. Immediately the system gave him points for being mocked. Shu made his case and said he was also mocking him. But they'll see who bullies who else. Xiao thought, who would even care about snowfall during a battle? Xiao asked Shu what made him think that. Shu replied that he was cold, let him remove this snowball of his. He didn't understand the function of this snowball. Maybe he's locating, maybe he's finding the strength to strike a decisive blow. If an innate master gave up tracking, wouldn't that cut his strength in half? People were shouting that Shu had taken the time to argue about some trivial matter. It's snowing, what's next? Chao said he was refusing. Shu replied that it's difficult. He's good at using long-range spells, and he's good at close combat, so what kind of match will come out if he cheats? Chao asked what he was trying to accomplish. So he asked if they could open the barrier so he could bask in the sun. Chao realized he was fucked, not warming himself in the sun. All these people gathered to watch him warm his ass? Xiao said no warming up in the sun. Since everyone said so, why don't they shorten the distance a bit and fight in close combat? Just then Shu realized he was caught and asked how close. Chao replied that he didn't care about the rules. Close or far, he doesn't care. Shu asked him, was he serious? Even like that? Immediately, Chao almost slipped and replied that he was correct. The girls shouted at Shu to move away from him. Who would let him get close to his brother Qingtong? They looked at each other and Xiao said that the competition was starting. Shu immediately launched an attack, but ice appeared in front of him. Shu realized that it was a clone, a teleportation, a substitution, and immediately used his perception. Chao appeared in front of him and said he was hitting pretty good. The system said there were points for praise. Shu said he's not bad either. He thinks it has nothing to do with the snow, otherwise he would cheat out in the open. Shu realized that he couldn't ignore the snowfall. It had to be done this way to make Chao a little confused. Shu realized that unless he could match Chao's technique, close combat would be useless. Chao immediately decided to attack and turned his sword into an ice sword. And then in a moment Shu finally realized why no one had managed his first glacier sword. Chao immediately used it and with his ice abilities, submerged Shu into an ice stone. People didn't believe that Shu was frozen after 2 swords. Wasn't Chao too strong? He couldn't handle the first glacier sword, so he used 2 swords at once. Chao realized that Shu had an innate physique after all. Perhaps his spiritual ice element would be able to freeze the flesh and blood of a practitioner of the 10th stage of spirit hardening, but it was unlikely to cause rigor mortis and death. Chao behind his attack decided to use the Milky Way and immediately applied it on the ice he had previously created. Xiao saw that the acquired sword intent. He had comprehended the acquired sword intent. Before this, Ju had an acquired blade intent, and now Chang had comprehended an acquired sword intent as well. Sword intent. How on earth would Shu resist him while in a frozen state? The boy was upset because Shu who defeated him would fall by Chao's 3 swords. He can't believe it. Mu thought he had turned into an ice sculpture at the beginning of the battle. When it was over, the old man said that he would have to come down to comfort him. Shu had built his plan from the beginning, and the moment he attacked, he broke the ice and managed to grab his technique. Chao was surprised, for he had seen something like this before. Before this, His immortal mountain-rolling immortal style had been repelled by Shu's sword, thus laying the foundation for his defeat. He didn't think he would see something like this again, and he hadn't intended to use the sword in battle to begin with. He shifted the energy of the sword into his hands. He's taunting him. Shu decided to attack in return and used a folded sword style. And two calm white clouds. Shu had developed this creative attack during yesterday's fight with Ju, only this time he used a point in the light. When people saw this thing, they said it was a horror. The sword in Shu's hands was ferocious, but his body was also powerful. Shu thought that he would hunt down his flaws and defeat him. Immediately, he used the calmness of the white sword. This small attack wounded Chao's arm. He didn't even realize how it could happen. After all, he had set his sword down. Shu saw that unknown to him was the substitution style, and decided to use his perception skills. And lo and behold, he saw it, and then Shu decided to make a counterattack, with his palm to repel Chao's counterattack. The guys asked why Shu struck his palm into the void. Immediately, Chao's head appeared in front of his palm. The guys couldn't understand how this happened. Shu punched Chao. One got hit and the other puts in a switch. Chao realized that Shu had figured out his technique of walking amongst the snows right after the first use. His gaze during the battle terrifies him. Shu smiled and immediately used a spearhead attack. But Chao saw this and set his palm up. Looking at his hand, Chao saw the mark Shu's finger had left on his hand. He immediately walked back through the portal. Shu said that there really was a problem with this snow. I mean, he said he was cheating. Xiao didn't believe it. If it wasn't for that switch, he would have defeated him by now. The girl said that no matter how it was, Shu was the first to spill Chao's blood in the Chasing Clouds tournament today. Which meant, just like Shu said, Chao was moving through snowflakes. If it's true, then he was cheating. The girls cheered and shouted that they believe in Shu. And they know he is the best. And Shu will defeat him and she will bear him a child. Shu smiled and saw that it had become so lively among the spectators. They were all already cheering for him. Chao decided not to stall for time and used walking among the snow. He immediately scattered snow everywhere with magic. Shu realized that this was clearly his crowning blow. Once he was distracted for a moment, he immediately decided to take advantage of it. Shu apologized to Liu and said that he had broken the covenant and underestimated the opponent. Chao picked up the moment and used the net sword style. Chao immediately raised his hands and said he was unarmed, but used the snowfall and directed everyone to Shu. Shu said, what a cruel guy he was. So falling snow was not only needed for walking amongst the snow, but also for this unarmed snowfall. Although this terrifying spiritual ability is called unarmed snowfall, every falling snowflake carries murderous intent. The guys asked, he could still continue. Shu just stood still and received everything on his body. Shu fought with snowflakes aimed at his sword, while his body frantically recovered with a life cycle. Piercing and recovering and piercing. The pain he was experiencing at this moment felt no more painful than during the perfection of the sizzling firefly seed. Chao realized that the density of the snowflake attack under the sword intent was simply inhuman. Shu saw that he couldn't stop his palm, and used the exchange of points. Shu decided that he would raise his sword level, and immediately sent it straight into Chao's chest, leaving him no chance. Chao immediately used his strength and attacked back with an ice attack, turning everything around into ice. For the last time, Chao was left to use his seal. Immediately, he aimed it straight into the ice. Shu couldn't get out and remained inside the ice that Chao had shoved him into. He walked over to him and regarded him. The guys were saying that such a healthy piece of ice became so small in an instant. Because of its density, the Shu inside would not turn into a solid sculpture. Xiao saw this and said it was trouble. He was so wary of such deadly techniques. After all, Xiao raised his hand and said that the competition was over. And then a bright star came from the sky, which the boys all saw. It was Shu's sword, which attacked Chao with the speed of light, and hit right into his chest. The sword was so strong that it sealed Chao to the ice, and wouldn't let go until the last. Xiao seeing this asked, is this a spiritualized sword intent? Shu is at the threshold of innate sword intent. The guy said, what a strong sword. Really strong. It's more than 10 times stronger than yesterday. The old man thought that Shu had progressed so much in just the few days he hadn't seen him. It was simply unbelievable. Shu immediately came out of the ice, shattering it to pieces. Chow asked through his pain, what kind of sword technique was this? Shu raised his head with a smile and replied that it was the white cloud sword technique. And then the points for suspicion were added. Shu raised his hand and said that they needed help. Immediately, all the doctors came over to save them. Shu told them not to worry about him, but to help Chow first. He's got a hole in him and his congenital is more important. The guy was telling him he was seriously injured. Shu realized that saving people was a good thing, but he didn't need any help. The life cycle has picked up a lot since the snowmobiling shutdown. The injuries are all healed now. Shu said he didn't need any help. The doctor said it's like no one saw him get beaten up. Let him look at his clothes. They're all blood-stained. The doctors looked at him and asked how was that possible. What a strange person. Shouldn't he have been injured after receiving Chow's punches? His body has a kind of endless surge of vitality. It's much better than the Kaijin pill. What a monstrous treatment. Shu said he had spoken, but they didn't believe him. Let them hurry up and save him. Hidden bitterness avoided his vital points. He would not die. The doctors immediately all looked at him strangely. Shu told them to save him as soon as possible. He's telling them the truth, and then they gathered around him and shouted that he was awake. They asked Chow, is he in a lot of pain? Shu said he didn't hurt him at all. And then Chow heard that and started cursing him. As Shu left, he received more points for admiration. All the fans clapped and were happy that he was still alive. Shu saw that on the stand. Elder Chiao had come to watch the match and even praised him. That was still okay. But what was Ju doing here? He beat him yesterday, and today he's admiring him. There's something wrong. We have to find out. And now comes the quarterfinals of the last round. The innate master. Number 1 in the rankings. In terms of strength, deservedly considered the elder sister of the outer court, Shu decided that he would observe Mo's sister. Chances were high that she would be his next rival. What's exciting about this match? Shu thought. There couldn't possibly be any excitement. An opponent with a stage 10 tempering spirit lost after only 2 exchanges of blows. Shu said, damn those innate masters. But there are 2 roads, one leads to the Goose Lake and the other to the courtyard. Shu said that the former represented mystery and the unknown, while the latter represented comfort and coziness. Shu thought that he had gotten rid of the sizzling firefly seed, so why would he go to the lake? To eat another one? Shu decided that he would head to the courtyard, and before he reached the house he had already decided that he would take a hot tub. Lying on the couch he pulled out a pill and sniffed, saying double high for him this. Shu said that he had broken through to the 8th stage of spirit hardening. After perfecting the sizzling firefly seed last night, he had suppressed the realm, but now he somehow relaxed and broke through immediately. Shu decided that he didn't give a damn. It was quite possible for him that his current cultivation speed was worthless to true geniuses. Shu opened the system and saw the points and said that they were a bit low. Without the sizzling firefly seed, he was no longer getting passive points every second. Relying only on the spectators from the stands for the duel, he received a maximum of 4,000 to 5,000 points. This is also thanks to Chow's unarmed snowfall. In the middle of the night, Shu thought that it wasn't that he was worried about tomorrow's fight at all. Not at all. He went outside and thought that the cicadas were chirping, the frogs were croaking, the wind had died down, and there were no people at all. Shu rejoiced and said that it was a good time to practice fencing. He immediately began to work on himself. Sword wielding was different from other passive skills. It wasn't just given as reinforcement and sharpness, but rather through insight. And that insight came from Shu himself. So far, he had been impressed by Chow's reception of the unarmed frost. It wasn't about the strength of spiritual ability or skill level. It was the first time he had ever seen someone detach sword intent from themselves and attach it to snowflakes. This way of using the sword intent opened up new horizons for him. Yes, he had now decided to steal from the master. Steal Chow's unarmed frost. Although the snow was not falling, but the intention of the sword was attached to the snow, could it be attached to something else? Shu tried something new and said in a moment that he failed. He wondered, what was the difference from his performance? Shu sighed and said that it was still good that no one saw, otherwise he would have been ashamed. Stealing from a master is not easy, Shu said. However, swordsmanship of all things parasitic with sword intent has the greatest effect. In fact, this method can be used with sword intent. This cultivation method was very similar to the one he had honed before. No spiritual ability, solely with a single sword. Shu thought that moving in tune with his heart meant moving in tune with his sword? Perhaps he could reach that level if he continued on that path. He doesn't have the best talent and has only practiced one style of white cloud. However, his sword intent improved with the appearance of sword wielding. The main way to perfect the sword is to utilize the sword intent with spiritual abilities to produce an outstanding result, except that he uses the intent of the sword solely for battle. This path is destined to become a completely different path from the common path. You should think of a strategy for the upcoming semi-final. Shu said that the existence of the innate physique was revealed, and if the gap were to widen, and he would lose half of his abilities. The only thing that could affect the course of the battle was how to use the hidden bitterness to bypass the intent of the sword, and he was able to manifest a few tricks using the first calm cloud style. Stitched sword net style, naked sword style, and fickle sword style. Since the battle with Chao, he was only able to display style at a critical moment that was more of a combination of sword and weapon intent. At that time, he felt as if the hidden bitterness had a life of its own. Shu began to think over the spiritualized weapon. It is also a way to focus the three styles of sword intent. He was able to realize it through intimacy with hidden bitterness. If he could perfectly control the hidden bitterness with sword intent, wouldn't he be able to embody the legendary sword control technique? Flying is an innate privilege. He's at the 8th stage of tempering his spirit, and with a controllable flying sword, wouldn't he amaze the world with his talent? And then he decided he would give it a try. Shu led the energy into the sword and said that it was beautiful. It shows his closeness with him. Pointing his fingers at the sword told him to get up. Immediately he fell to the ground. Shu saw that it wasn't like that at all. Was the momentum of the sword throw too low? Shu immediately raised his sword and threw it up to the sky and saw that he could control it. But it started to become covered in fire. Shu pointed his fingers and didn't understand what was going on. He wasn't covered in ice right now, so wouldn't he become the second Chao? Shu immediately jumped on top of him and used a sword walk. But he failed and collapsed to the ground. Shu through the pain got up and said it was gross and he didn't believe it. And decided he would try it again. Shu decided that he would continue. After all, he is not actually spiritualized. The moment he awakens is the moment he flies up and is summoned. That is, the inversion of the inverse sword style. Only in the process of inversion does it become truly spiritualized. Shu said that this damn reverse sword style should have been called the controlled sword style long ago. But what was the difference between rising and falling, he thought. Shu took the sword in his hands and presented it to his throat, thinking, isn't the true principle to face himself, gaining spiritual wisdom? He is its master. Shu immediately threw it into the ground and said, what a nasty sword. Immediately, the system said there were points for cursing. At noon the next day, the outer courtyard of the Chensan Spiritual Palace marked the annual hot painting, because today, a new champion of the Chasing Clouds tournament would be born. Elder of the Spiritual Technique Pavilion, Elder of the Medicine Pavilion, Elder of the Spiritual Weapon Pavilion, and the ranking of the top 100 is 10th and 5th place. Mu was saying how great it was that she got a seat in advance yesterday. On her left hand is Chul and on her right hand is Ju. She's so happy. People were telling them to bag him the hottie as soon as possible. He's gonna take care of that guy. The girl asked, who were they? Brother Du and Sister Lin from the top 10. Just then, one of the guys shouted out, isn't that Su from the inner courtyard? Su, the strongest genius of the Su family from Qiansan Prefecture, broke through to innateness as early as 13. At 14 comprehended the burn sword intent. If anyone hears one of those names they will be shocked. That's how important a person sat on the podium. The girl asked why she couldn't see Borat Xiao. The guy said they were sorry they didn't see the sister from the courtyard. Heard Su likes her a lot, so she's always hanging around her. The guy confirmed that Sister Zhao is a goddess. Not only is she a beauty, but she has a gorgeous figure and is the strongest in the inner courtyard in terms of strength. But he had never seen her in person, and then the fan saw that Zhong was here. One of the 33 people in the courtyard, the epitome of a leader, a guy named Zhong asked which one of them was Shu who killed Chun. Liu replied that he was still looking for him. Liu said that he didn't seem to have arrived yet. Zhong replied that calmly, he will come to the arena after all. The guy said that they had heard that boss when knew people from the courtyard. So it was Zhong? The others said that they couldn't get away with something like this. The guy replied so they wouldn't think. If Shu won the tournament with his cultivation level, he would easily get into the inner courtyard. On the judge's chair, Xiao Xilan sipped his drink. Immediately, he jumped into the sky in front of everyone to announce something. Xiao stood in the middle of the arena and said that the hour had come and now they could start the semi-finals. He held up the medallion and said, Shu and Mu, the semi-finals are the battles of the innate warriors everyone has been waiting for. These two, the first one had reached innate just a year after entering the spiritual palace, and second not to mention his innate body. Chao's defeat early yesterday further proved his unwavering innate strength. The guy shouted that as expected of Sister Mu, innate confidence. The doctors immediately entered the arena to be on the lookout. The guys were asking what those two idiots wanted here. Where's Shu? Where did he go? He always disappears at the critical moment. He's going to make us worry about him in the semifinals. The guys pretended it wasn't their fault and asked why they were asking them that. Xiao immediately got angry and asked, where the hell did this guy go? Immediately, Shu flew into the arena on his Picha. No one expected such a turn of events. How could Shu do such a thing? The girls were screaming that he was incredible. They were screaming for him to look at them, how beautiful they were. The others criticized and said, what a show-off. How does he manage to wield a sword at the 8th stage of spirit hardening? Doesn't the ability to fly come after the concept of innateness? Did he have an epiphany in just one night? The guy said it's like that's possible. Let him look at his aura, he's at stage 8. But is he flying immediately? Mu said that he was flying on the wrong side of the sword. Shu imagined that it was flying fast like lightning. But it's forbidden to wield a broken sword. After a night of deliberation, this trash black sword does indeed possess spiritual perception, but only when turned with the point towards it. Because of despair, I had to stand on them the opposite. To hide the bitterness could fly with him. The flight from the yard to the peak of the emerging clouds took an hour. Shu realized that after an hour-long flight, he realized that this world had peculiar laws. Damn sword! Shu said that he was able to collect just over 4,000 passivity points the entire way. Of course, they were contributed before that. Now here was the information panel. Xiao saw that this kid had clearly just comprehended sword spiritualization yesterday and had already learned how to wield it overnight. What a talent! Such qualities were only seen in Su. Yes, and this kind of application was simply amazing. Xiao shouted to Shu to come down to the arena. Shu said he was coming now. The guy said they thought he was cool because of his mecha flight, and it turned out to be a control technique. He didn't intentionally stand on him backwards, did he? He's laughing his ass off. They were yelling at him to try harder. Shu looked at the system and saw that there were still people cheering him on. He immediately put away the sword in his hands and descended slowly. Mu saw it and said it was the order of the chasing clouds. How will he enter without a badge? Shu said that he was cautious. Will wield the sword more confidently next time. Shu immediately went over to her and said that he apologized for the delay. It won't happen again. Mu laughed and said he was so funny. And then the system showed that praise points had been added. Shu thought, what else is praise? To him, it sounds like bullying. Xiao said for the contestants to get ready and let them start the duel. Mu told Shu to be careful. She's going to attack, after all. And immediately crossed her arms and let her energy flow. Shu found himself in a fog and asked, what is this? Are they really seeds? How is she going to fight with them? Shu immediately realized that this was an innate tree attribute. These were the seeds of an ancient tree. Mu said it was right. And with a motion of her finger, she told the tree to spread out. Immediately, Shu jumped out with him. Shu saw that the others had engaged in fierce battles, and this girl was using seeds. An ancient tree of the acquired level has such terrifying strength. Shu decided that he would summon the black sword to take him away from here. Immediately, the tree grabbed him and squeezed him. Shu realized that close combat was a mistake. As soon as he approached, he was hit by a combination of attacks. He was completely trapped by the tree, and Mu was in no hurry to finish the battle and decided to go underneath it. The guys were saying, what a cruel girl. This smiling angel shows no mercy during the battle. Mu looked at them and laughed out loud. And she saw that there was a nice fat tree right next to her. Shu was completely immersed in her, and the guys asked what she was doing. Mu said it was about time, and said the word explosion. After that, the tree exploded and the fire covered the entire arena. All that was left of their place was a hole that was buried in the ground. The elder and the others could not understand what had happened. Then the roots of a tree began to emerge from the ground. The guy said that a human wouldn't be able to survive something like this. So where does that power come from? Mu realized that thanks to the secretly parasitic seeds in Shu's body, she could sense his life force. He's not dead yet. Mu asked, is he as tough as a cockroach? And how did he do with this technique? Shu came out of the smoke and said, what a strong innate. Shu realized that before it was the Chow Ai sword and now the Mu ancient tree. The power of innate attributes is too strong. If he too had similar strength, would he limit himself to a single melee, he thought? The guys asked, is Shu stupid? Is he purposely not attacking and waiting for the tree to grow? Mu immediately saw that Shu wasn't attacking and decided to use the tree barrier, and yelled for him to receive it. The roots of the tree immediately attacked Shu. The guys closed their eyes and said that upon rough inspection, the ancient tree had about 100 offshoots. And they are constantly increasing. From a blast like that, even with his innate body, Shu would have broken all of his arms and legs at the very least. His head wouldn't have exploded, either. They wondered what it was. Had Shu gotten his own, but? Shu immediately decided to become a laborer and mow wood. Shu used his skills and told her to take care of herself. Immediately, her tree roots went back in with telekinesis. Mu asked, where did this boundless sword intent come from? Is it Shu's sword? The seeds on the ground? Is it still herself? He is the sword of Shu. Xiao watched and thought Shu's reverse sword control technique was admirable, but he had no idea that this was just the beginning. But how was he trained in the sword of all things? Did anyone even surpass him in swordsmanship in the Chensan spiritual palace? Shu saw all the tree roots flying at him, and pulling out his sword, he let his energy fly at her. The guys were saying that this was the end. He thought Shu was going to use a special strike, so why didn't anything happen? Mu saw that something was wrong and said that she was the only one who didn't feel any difficulty and would take over the situation. Mu touched her hands and said that she was attacking. Immediately, she released her roots right at Shu. At this moment, everyone closed their eyes and Shu stood still, waiting for the right moment to cut them. The boys were asking what did he do? Had he sheathed his sword? He didn't even notice Shu had done it. Shu stopped them with his strength, and immediately Mu flew into the sky. The guys asked, what was that just now? Shu saw that brother Shu took out his sword in an instant and immediately chopped many leaves. But how could he do that? Shu didn't spare them and chopped all the ends off. The guys said that once Shu had drawn his sword, hundreds of ancient trees were chopped down on the site, and now Shu is progressing too fast. And his naked sword style doesn't look so graceful. Shu said that there was no reason for Mu to be creative, but used the ancient raw vines to dodge the attack. Mu thought that if she hadn't planted the parody seeds to it, wouldn't she be chopped to pieces right now? Mu said that damn Zeus, he even committed such a cruel blow. Okay, she's using Trump too. She immediately dropped one pill, and a plant began to grow from the sky. The boys said that this girl had reliable courage. Could she not take lessons from the wound inflicted in her bosom? And now another one dares to get close to him? That's a surefire way to commit suicide. Shu realized that close combat was a great thing. Immediately, they jumped towards each other to clash. At the last moment, Mu tricked him, and with her trees immobilized his one arm to launch an attack. Shu saw and realized that she was completely like a snake, slithering stealthily towards him from the back. Shu was telling her to let him in, but she didn't feel sorry for him and went in with the plant in his body. Shu started calling her names and told her not to think she could get away with it. She slowly entered his body and Shu yelled for her to get off him. Shu thought, what kind of battle method is this? Disgusting. Mu said, how dare he call her a parasite? She's going to make a flower out of him now. Immediately, a flower came out on Shu's head just like she said it would. The guy started laughing at him and saying that he had a flower on his head. Shu realized that even his perception hadn't noticed the parasitization of her seeds in his body. It was somehow too unnoticeable. A blossoming flower is still okay, but after they took root in his head, it started releasing numbing factors that made him unable to move. He underestimated her and even used the naked sword style he learned last night, but that didn't work either. Shu said it was the little guy scaring him. Mu walked up to him and sniffed, saying, "What an amazing fragrance." Mu felt that his infinitely absurd life force was so seductive. She had finally reached her goal. Who could resist here? Mu pulled out her teeth and said that she wanted to try just a little bit. Shu yelled and told her not to even think about it. She disobeyed him and immediately sank her teeth right into his neck and slowly sucked his blood. People were interested and asked, "Is this normal? Isn't the judge going to separate them?" Xiao thought, what was the point of this? Who would he even want to save? Do they want him to save the kid? Mu should have boundaries of decency, but he should be treated. Xiao decided that he couldn't look at this anymore, he must save Shu. But at this time, Shu blushed as he felt pleased. Xiao saw and wondered, why is his face expressing pleasure? He can't understand. Shu realized that Mu was not sucking his blood, but rather his life force. If it were anyone else, he wouldn't even have a drop of life left in him. With an innate level life cycle, its life force is literally infinite. Once injured, his life force begins to increase dramatically. Mu realized that something was wrong with this endlessly approaching vitality. If it were an ordinary person, he would have already become a dried-up mummy. She was so attractive that it was impossible to tear herself away. And immediately she felt her life force begin to surge. One of the guys said for everyone to watch. Shu started to move. Shu realized that he had to find a way to get rid of her without letting her know about it. Shu immediately used his spearhead. At this moment, the flower flew out of his head without even doing anything. People didn't expect this and asked why the flower fell off. They shouted for Mu to cool down. Shu felt that control over her body as a whole had been regained, but one shoulder and her kidneys were still under her control. Shu turned around abruptly at the appropriate moment and grabbed her throat without fear. Mu screamed for him to let go of her, for she still wanted to suck. Mu, without any hindrance, shouted at the top of her voice that sucking was cool and she really enjoyed doing it. Immediately, the system said that passivity points had been added. Shu thought, what the hell kind of request? Sorry, suck blood. Shu asked, how should he proceed? Xiao immediately raised his hand and said that the fight was over. Mu, hearing this, yelled for them to wait and asked for Shu to let him go. Shu replied that he wouldn't let her in. He covered her mouth with his hand so she wouldn't say anything else. Mu couldn't stand it because of anger, and with her sharp teeth, she immediately grabbed his hand and bit it until it was bloody. Shu yelped in pain and punched her in the mouth. He asked her, is she a rabid dog? Mu asked him what he was doing. Shu didn't listen to her, immediately threw her behind the podium to keep her calm. Shu looked at his hand and saw Mu's saliva. He felt so sick that he called it an abomination. Xiao saw Mu lying on the ground outside the arena and said that the duel was over. Shu had won. Guys asked me what kind of fight is this? In the first half he was hitting everyone normally, so where did this change come from? The guys told him to Shu and ask. Seeing this kind of result is quite normal. The girl said it's the semifinals. Last year's semifinals featured fierce fights, and what do they see today? Leaving the waiting area, Shu thought that it wasn't even worth mentioning that Mu was very strong. Another girl had expanded his fighting sense. Chao and Mu had opened his eyes to the different methods of fighting within it. Ju is only halfway there. Shu sat down on a chair and began to meditate. And then a man came to him at once and said that Elder Chiao asked him to tell him. Shu thought, what could he have written to him that was so serious? That's right, Elder Chiao is observing the battles and can't come to the waiting area himself. Or perhaps the letter was sent on behalf of the elders. And opening the letter, he saw that it said Sealing Technician. As he read it, it immediately caught fire in his hands and immediately vaporized into fine ashes and flew away. Shu wondered what this sealing technique meant. Did it have to do with Mo, who he would meet in the finals? Speaking of which, no one in the outer court knows anything about her spiritual abilities. Each of her opponents was eliminated after a couple of blows. Could it be due to the sealing technique? Is this the power of its innate attribute? But how does it work? It seals spiritual power. The guy said that again with just her left arm alone pushed her opponent off the court. Sister Mo is very strong, and she's so strong, it makes one wonder if Shu will make her use both hands. Or maybe she's just giving her opponent a glimmer of hope by occupying her hand. The guy said that this Mo was very strong. Even if she is at the beginning stage of the Yuan Ting stage, it was likely that he would not be able to defeat her. The duel would drag on for a while. Lu said, in other words, you have to beat her fast? The guy replied that it's like that. Each of her attacks is accompanied by a special effect that reduces the opponent's abilities. He can't figure out what that ability is. Lu asked, so is it the power of her innate attribute? Lu asked Brother Xiong what he thought about the finale. Xiong replied that Shu's innate body didn't stand a chance. Here comes the moment of the finale, and all the guys had points to Shu, for his suspicion, ridicule, and admiration. Shu said of course so, many people admire his bouts. It's worth looking at those passivity points alone. Shu immediately jumped out of his sword, and immediately landed on the arena where Mo was already standing. Mo said that she was watching him in the group round. Does he really like humor like that? The system immediately awarded him points for his praise. Shu looked at her and said she was so beautiful. Mo thought it was the first time she had ever been told something like that directly to her face. Shu said, lest she misunderstand him, he was talking about her copper stove. Immediately, Mo changed her face. Shu replied that of course she was fine too, but the copper stove was much prettier. Shu was immediately given points for cursing. What was he thinking? First she praises him and then she curses him? Shu asked, could he look at her? Mo thought that if it were anyone else, she would have objected, but since it was him, he was trying to compliment her anyway, so he'd take it seriously. Let him look around all he wants. Shu looked her over and immediately took it from her hands. Mo seemed disrespectful and looked at him angrily. Shu apologized for being harsh and said that he was just attracted to the stove. Let her think nothing of it. Mo looked and replied that she understood. And he looked sincere, so he must have done it unintentionally, too. The guys said they had reached out to each other and even touched hands, so why wouldn't they let them go into battle? The others asked, what's the rush? Shu has time to adjust his breathing. And anyway, how would it help him when inspecting the copper furnace? Shu realized that it was true. His sensations were authentic. As soon as he stepped onto the platform, he immediately activated his perception and vaguely felt a frightening energy in the fight, and he can't feel it until he touches her. He would have to hook Mo and touch her right hand to get what he wanted, and while touching her, he noticed that her right hand had at least 10 times more energy concentrated in it than her entire body. Shu thought, what kind of monster is she? As an opponent, she is clearly above the level of Chao, Mu, and their kind. This is a sealing technique, don't let her scare him. She doesn't have blindfolds all over her right arm, does she? He stove in front of her and immediately withdrew into the distance. Mo asked, isn't he a melee fighter? After all, she was too. Shu thought, what's the big joke? Shu pulled out his sword and said that he was actually a swordsman. She immediately hesitated for a moment. Shu said that she was a strong innate level practitioner, so why wouldn't he use his sword and strike first? The guys were asking what kind of conversation they were having. Isn't he ashamed at all? Mo said that she would let him. Xiao saw that they were all prepared and said that the duel was starting. Immediately, Shu launched a net sword style attack. ML saw all of this, and with her palm stopped all of his attacks. Shu saw that she had inhuman speed. She also has a shining point. What Mo used was nothing but the most ordinary outer courtyard spiritual ability called the Spirit Dissecting Hand. However, it is rare that one can train this ability to such a level. The hand speed is so fast that it erases residual images, so isn't it an unarmed sword glow? Mo smiled and said it was her turn. She immediately flew into the air and attacked him from above. She realized that he didn't want to fight her and her sealing technique. He can't let her touch his body. She was immediately caught in the sword's heels. Shu was surprised, because if she fought like that, she could destroy the sword too. Close combat is close combat, it's time to show yourself. Shu picked the right moment, and immediately grabbed her arm. And then, with his left hand, he threw a left hook. The impact was so strong that Mo didn't restrain herself on her feet, and flew several meters backwards. People were screaming that it worked. As expected from a congenital body. Shu, let him push a little more. Shu saw that it was indeed sealing. She didn't even touch him when he attacked her, but his physical and spiritual power was briefly blocked. Even the strength of his body was sealed. He couldn't even use his fists with a shining point against her. Just one strike. If the opponent attacks as usual, wouldn't it be like fighting a giant baby with hundreds of strikes? Shu said that it frightened him. How could a person have the power of such a despicable attribute? Mo didn't say anything to him and just held his hand. Shu said that it looked like we would have to use the sword after all. Shu saw that the first fight only lasted 1 round. He would have to cheat and pump himself up. Immediately, he opened passive points. Shu used his points and began to improve in the middle of the fight. Even though Mo could attack him, Shu raised his skill to the acquired level and said that Mo was strong. Mo replied that he was too. Shu said he was going to get serious. Immediately, he reached the level of innate. The guys were asking what's going on? Was it an earthquake? Immediately, all the swords came together from the guy's hands and flew up into the sky. Shu had improved all of his skills, and Snao saw all of this and said that he couldn't believe such a thing. This is the innate intent of the sword. Shu understood that acquired sword intent would saw 1 li, innate sword intent would saw 10 li. The guys were asking what's going on here. Looks like he's going crazy. Has Shu realized the innate intent of the sword? But how could he be? He's impressed. How does he manage to keep surprising them like that? They're all awake right now, aren't they? The guy said that innate sword intent was extremely rare, once every 100 years. Last year, it had befallen Su and now Shu. Mo asked Shu, was he laughing? Immediately, the system showed him points for suspicion. Shu didn't expect that the innate sword intent could break through the barrier. This kind of point income was incomparable to anything. With this breakthrough alone, he was able to collect almost tens of thousands of points. In exchange for 1,000 passive points, he would receive almost 10,000. Mo asked Shu, could he continue? Did Shu see that she had been waiting for him to come to his senses after pumping all this time? What an embarrassment. At least Mo is a kind person and didn't attack him. Shu replied that he could continue. Immediately, he let his sword fly and swung it in front of her face. Mo immediately raised her hands and defended herself. Shu said that this sealing technique is the truest cheat. Shu immediately adopted a naked sword style and struck several blows at once to make Mo feel it. The guy said Mo's hands were tied. How would she meet the second blow? And now Shu had lost his temper and become crazy. Shu made up his mind and said that just in case, he would strike again. And then he felt that his spiritual power was exhausted. Shu here attacked her and didn't want to leave her a chance, so she couldn't attack in return. With some miracle, she was able to absorb this attack, and afterwards looked at Shu very strangely, as if she had something in her head. She was able to take it all in, and immediately attacked in return. When Shu saw this, he was surprised and said that she was a monster. Shu started to run away and thought that she didn't even have an innate body, but she still managed to absorb his innate sword intent. Shouldn't she be factually broken in half? And then Mo was very tired, for she had expended a lot of energy. Shu thought, could it be that sealing this technique had taken a lot of energy from her? The guy said that Shu has a wide variety of psychological attacks. He comes up and attacks, or he steps back and watches. If it were him, if he had seen the light of his innate sword intent extinguished, he would have been so frightened that he would have bolted off the platform. Shu was approaching the moment of the attack and saw that it was too late. The last time he had faced a situation like this, he had fallen into the trap of Chao's unarmed ice. The moment her face and fist made contact, Mo immediately broke the distance and launched a stovepipe attack. Mo immediately said the seal and tempering of heaven and earth. She realized that she wasn't going to miss the opportunity. Immediately, chains came out of her furnace and grabbed Shu's arms so that he couldn't run away and attack. Shu weighed in the sky like a test subject and didn't understand what kind of devilish technique is this. She has such a strong spiritual ability? It's scary in a very powerful way. Xiao said that even he had never encountered such a spiritual ability before. She was definitely not from their pavilion. It seems that Mo had some luck in supplementing her attack. The guys asked that this spiritual ability is at least of the level of a great master. Who is Mo really? Liu asked his brother, is this the level of a grand master? A spiritual ability of this level is rare in the inner court. Shu immediately decided to use the spearhead technique. But his strength was exhausted and he failed. Shu saw and realized that it was unscientific. How could cutting through the innate level light not cut through them? Shu saw that Mo was up to something there and didn't understand why he had to piss right now. Let someone help him. Mo immediately crossed her fingers and used the fusing technique. And at that moment, the chains began to ignite with fire. The guys were surprised and asked out of fear, "Is this normal at all?" Shu said she doesn't give him a chance either. Mo, hearing these words, started to get even angrier and improved her fusion flow by a few percent. Shu didn't understand where he was getting this feeling of déjà vu from. Perfecting the seed of the sizzling fireflies was much more painful. With every inhale and exhale, magma goes from the inside out to the inside in. To be honest, it's kind of nothing. Shu yelled that he didn't even feel it. The guys were saying just how much hardship had Shu experienced before today. He didn't even feel the burning, and speaking the truth, they can understand it. For all those who perfect the innate body must have high perseverance. And then everyone freaked out and the system showed to have points added for admiration and care. Xiao saw that Shu could still hold on. What kind of reception would this battle end with? Immediately, Mo sighed. Shu realized that if he continued like this, he might die. Should he start tempering the magma inside his body? Shu understood all too well that this was going to hurt, but what could be done? We'd have to risk what was left. Shu immediately threw a pill into his mouth from the ring and began to temper his body to endure it all. Shu opened his eyes and said with a smile, "It worked." People said it was cruel. Shu can do anything. And they can't look at it anymore. Mo realized that if even the heaven and earth tempering seal didn't help her defeat him, would she really have to use that technique? Shu thought, how can he break this seal? It's not fucking funny, really. Shu yelled at her to stop. Mo saw that Shu realized what she was about to do. Anyway, she couldn't let him get free. Shu wondered what exactly was sealed in her right hand, since it possessed such power even without unlocking it. How could it be unlocked? Shu panicked and wondered what he should do. And at the last moment, he closed his eyes to think for a while. Xiao was surprised and asked, "Is this really the sword of all things?" Shu felt that he had cognized the special chi of the sword, and releasing his sword powers, he believed that the absorbed Mo chi of the sword had not yet been purified. Perception has an astringent power that suppresses the aura of this sword, making it unable to rise up to meet the wind and waves. And then it occurred to Shu to use the reverse sword style. And at the last moment said break. Did the guys ask what he's doing? Something was wrong with Mo's body. And then Mo saw her belly start to grow. Mo couldn't help herself and immediately shouted in his direction. Shu laughed and said that it was a reverse sword style. Mo couldn't walk from the pain and screamed into every crevice. Mo realized that it was still good that Shu couldn't be distracted for a while. Shu used the reverse sword style again and said it was time to rip. And the sword fell to the ground again and Mo's belly became even bigger. The guys were asking how Shu does it. My goodness, isn't that a bit much for an arena battle? Shu repeated again what he had said earlier. Not even being frightened by her seal, he repeated time after time. Mo couldn't stand it anymore, and was able to turn to Shu. The guy didn't stay silent and again repeated the reverse sword a few more times. The sword fell to the ground each time, but Mo liked it. She couldn't get over it. The system immediately came out and said that spell points had been added. Shu liked that a lot. The guy said they couldn't do it anymore. What a humorist Shu is. They all started laughing at Mo. They couldn't even stop the old man who was cheering for Shu and yelling for him to do it again. Apparently Shu had already lost his mind. Shu realized that was the advantage of not having a barrier. It wasn't too pleasant to recover in real time. Mo thought she wanted to show mercy, but because of Shu, she had to release her right arm. Shu said something was coming toward him. It's time to stop being funny. If he lets it attack him, he's going to go down. Shu realized again that he needed to say reverse sword style. But Mo tried to counter his technique. At the last moment, the sword came to his ring and made contact with her, and then strange figures came out of the ring. Shu said he was a genius. And once he thought of wearing a ring around his neck. Having solved the problem with the hidden bitterness devouring the wearer, he could finally use all of his powers. Shu said the full innate sword intent. Mo was already spitting blood and couldn't resist. It was almost impossible for her to seal his sword chi into her body. Shu still had some strength left. Xiao saw that Shu was able to evolve the sword of all things to the point where he could control other people's bodies. Mo continued her attack and rose into the air, standing in front of Shu, who was sealed. Shu laughed and said that she finally realized his pain. Mo told him to let her go. Shu replied that he hadn't restrained her. Anyway, she was the first one to start. Had she already forgotten? Mo replied that it was impossible. Shu said that meant it was impossible for him too. The guys were saying that these two are trying so hard because of Shu's actions, so why can't he start worrying about them? The guy laughed and replied that they were both whipping blood. Except blood isn't money. Mo realized that she had no innate body and was only able to survive because of the surge of life force released by her right hand. Mo realized she was getting tired of it. And then she made a decision and said that she would be the first to let him go. Shu felt his hands and saw that the life cycle had instantly healed most of his body. Mo said that it was his turn. Shu apologized and replied that he actually couldn't control the chi of his sword anymore. She didn't expect this and used her curse towards Shu. Immediately, the system warned him about it. Mo started bullying him again and bleeding the chain. Shu saw this and started insulting her, and then the ring on his neck started to move and a sword immediately appeared in front of his face. Shu immediately said, condensing the point of light in his forehead. The guy saw it and said that it was the move he used to win yesterday. Mo continued her attack, not realizing that she was about to die. Xiao said that it was too slow. Mo might have a frightening special attack, but the pressure exerted by the sealing technique limits it. Had it happened on any other day, the outcome would have been different. But she was faced with Shu, who could use different and strange fighting styles. A frightening young man, grabbing at every little thing in battle. On the horizon, Shu saw the sword and said go for it. The Master Eater is giving him a chance. Reverse sword style. Mo didn't have time to turn around before the sword was at the back of her head. Immediately, it pierced her back with a mighty force. It couldn't react in time, and immediately lost a lot of blood and clung directly to Shu's body. The guys were telling Shu that it was too cruel. He even got himself caught up in it. They can't watch it anymore. Mo screamed that her heart was hurting. Shu said, how else would he have been able to stop Mo's right arm if he hadn't clutched onto it? And at that moment, the chains all broke, and Shu grabbed her and collapsed to the ground with her, but also immediately gave her a pill. Xiao said that the duel was over. Shu was the winner. The doctor asked Shu, does he need treatment? Shu replied that he would get around. Shu said that since they had come, he couldn't give them anything special. Let them take these 5 roasted pieces of skin as a souvenir, the doctor said, and thought he was a monster. Too bad that magma didn't burn him to death. Xiao said that the first thing he would like to do was to congratulate Shu on winning this year's Chasing Clouds tournament. Honestly speaking, his actions had exceeded his expectations. Shu realized that of course it was true. Who, if not him, had gotten the championship? Xiao said that he had noticed his actions back in the qualifying round. He would take him to the breakthrough competition, where he made great progress and advanced to the next round. He almost couldn't take his eyes off of him. All of his actions astounded him. Shu realized that the elder was taking revenge. This middle-aged man had finally found the moment to shit on him. Xiao said that, so there was no doubt that Shu was a dark horse. Everyone faces a turning point in their lives, or a setback, even an opportunity. Shu realized that somehow he was overreacting. Effort? Well, maybe he was. And since Xiao said so, he would try harder to get more passivity points in the future. Xiao said he hoped there would also be people who could impress him at the next tournament. Xiao thought and told everyone that it was now safe to move on to the awards. Shu walked up to the arena and saw the crowd of disgraced people in front of him. Shu told the passing guys that he was out. Congratulations. And then the system showed that there were points for cursing. Shu saw that Mo was using ignore against him. After all, she had just been stabbed with a sword. She could have at least glanced in his direction. What kind of petty person is that? She's a real resentful person. Shu, upon receiving the reward, saw that he already had a second ring. Xiao said that everyone in the top 10 gets a chance to enter the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion to choose a spiritual ability. The top 3 will be rewarded with an innate pill. If not needed, it can be exchanged for another elixir of the same value. The kids were all amazed that the winners would be able to enter the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion.